All right, I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. on February 4th. All select board members are in attendance and we are recording this meeting. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we're going to open up with citizen statements and petitions, just asking if anybody here in person or online would like to address the board. Seeing as there's none, I'll move on to community events and announcements. And so the one announcement we have for today is that the Parks Department has posted their summer job openings for 2026. That's this summer. And we're looking for lifeguards, Snack Shack employees, counselors, junior counselors, as well as a swim lesson coordinator / head lifeguard. So if that's something that you're interested in and you need a job this summer, you can find detailed job descriptions on our website along with a link to the application form. And the deadline for that is February 28th. I see that our Parks Director, Dan Byer, is online. Dan, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it all. Thank you.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So make sure you get your application in so you can get your interviews so you can get paid this summer. All right. So for number 4, minutes for approval, we need to pass over the December 3rd minutes because some last minute edits came in, need to be applied and resent out.
So yeah, we'll incorporate those and recirculate to the group.
Speaking of circulation, number 5, meeting minutes for circulation. You can find
Great transition, smooth.
I'm working on it. You'll find January 7th, 2026 and January 21st, 2026 in the meeting minutes section of the Civic Clerk website. You should have gotten a notification for that. Please review those and send any edits our way. Okay, so number 6 for appointments. Yeah.
So Chief Kersey's at his son's basketball game right now and wants to talk about this if possible. So if we can go to 7 and have John present.
Absolutely. So let's pass over that till Chief has a minute to join us. And then number 7, Mr. Dudley, would you like to come up and talk to us about snow and ice?
No, I would not. I don't want to talk about snow. I did. I hope you guys all got the memo I sent out this afternoon. Yes. We are going to need to deficit spend. Looking at our numbers, we are overall 12,000 in the red right now. We have 22 events that we've had this winter, which is last year for the whole season we had 15 or 16. So we are up to 22 this year. It's not looking good for February. There's 6 chances for snow in the next 4 weeks. So we definitely, we're hurting right now in the budget.
Can I ask about supply for salt?
Yep. So wasn't ideal timing before this last storm, the big storm we had. Our salt distributor reached out and said, we don't have any salt because our ship is stuck out at sea and won't be in until the following week. I had to change our strategy for dealing with the roads. And I'm sure that you guys saw Jeremy's post that like, there's going to be a little bit more patience with this storm because we don't have the material. Since then, he reached out to me on Wednesday. Trying to think, my weeks are all.
Are you talking about the strategy where you had to wait to do the salt?
Yeah. So
I don't know that that turned out.
one week, usually we pre-treat before a storm. When we do straight salt, we cut it with sand. just so that there was something there and we could stretch out what we had and save the straight salt for the end of the storm when we really needed it. The guys used it sparingly throughout the storm. Typically, we treat intersections and hills throughout the storm with material to hopefully alleviate accidents, but they used it sparingly this storm. We are back up and running with salt. The shed is about 2/3 full right now. And he said his supply has come in, so he said, let me know if you need more.
What about the possibility of citizens grabbing a bucket or two?
Well, now that we were getting things, we had our last load brought in today, and that hasn't gone away. What I have gone away with this year, and it was with discussion with Jeremy, is that we no longer allow residents into the salt shed because it's a liability. So what we've done is made a sand salt mix pile by one of our gates that's accessible even when we're not there, and people are allowed to come and get their 2 buckets per household. And that never went away. We let them do that throughout the storm. We just weren't letting people go take straight salt. We don't anyways, but we're not letting people take straight salt out of the salt shed anymore.
And you're only leaving a couple of yards there, right?
Yeah, when it's getting down there, we'll mix some more and we'll put it out there so that get it.
Can I just say, I think that the highway department did an amazing job with the recent storm. I saw people complimentary online, which is a rarity. So I applaud you and the highway crew for doing, especially given the challenges of dealing with a lower volume of material. So thank you for that.
I will pass along your message to the crew.
And the crazy low temperatures throughout the whole duration of that.
There was some issues throughout that storm with, because it was such light fluffy snow, it was plugging up radiators and guys were having to pull it in the shop for a half hour and let it thaw out because the defroster's not working. And then when the defroster's working, it's thawing everything out. And then it's freezing around the windshield wipers and they'd stop working. So we had to pull them in the shop for that. It was nonstop.
Yeah.
And we had some significant breakdowns. So after the storm, the guys were allowed to get a little rest. We had 3 guys in the shop for 3 days trying to get everything back up and running for the next storm. And right now I can say that we're in good shape, both out on the roads, I believe, and in the shop.
People got caught up on their sleep, hopefully.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the GPS?
Yeah. So
Paying for that.
So we got GPSs for all of our trucks. The town trucks is going to be year round. We also got GPSs for the contractors. So now that allows me, and it actually
These
uses
contractors who are driving our trucks?
no
or
contractors that are driving their trucks. The difference being that everything that is a town vehicle, it is plugged right into the port in the truck. And it now diagnoses things going on with the engine. So it can send feedback back to us to say, hey, this is not firing right before it turns into, hey, you blew the engine.
It's more than GPS, it's someone like I would.
For the town,
It's not a TomTom.
for the town vehicles, it is more than GPSs. For the plow contractors, it allows me to see where they are, how fast they're going. And I actually had a resident that called and complained that said the truck was going by my house too fast and that's why my mailbox got taken out by the snow. And I looked at him like, he was nowhere near the speed that you're saying he was. And that was one of the benefits that I was pushing with these GPSs. The speed, your truck hasn't been here in an hour, and I can say actually he was there 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's great.
But the big selling point for me when this was presented to me was that internal diagnostic of the truck with our vehicles to hopefully catch the big repairs before they need to happen.
Is this an aftermarket? Is this part of the?
This is Verizon. And with the town trucks, like I said, it plugs right into the computer.
What kind of motors, engine?
Varies from truck to truck.
It's pulling the
Verizon.
data.
But Verizon will give you the DTCs and all the diagnostics.
Yeah, so if there's issues that are showing up in the diagnostic on our trucks, then I can see it on the computer or on my phone.
That's interesting.
The plow contractors is just a cigarette lighter. Plug it in your GPS.
So they're just location
Yeah,
data.
I kind of laugh because I tell the guys, when I call you, plug it in. When you're done, go home. Some guys forget, and I'm like, they're in, like I can see everything, everywhere they're going.
So those are just gonna be in use during plow seasons,
So they're,
or we pay for them all
so
year?
it's paid for in 6-month intervals. So snow and ice is gonna pay for 6 months of the 19 units.
Yeah.
And then once we're done with snow and ice, we'll go back, we'll keep them in our trucks, keep doing the diagnostics. And then again, throughout the year, if people are questioning what we're doing, and we'll pay for that out of our regular operating budget.
Okay.
So you'll see that in a 27 budget request as an additional for the GPS and snow and ice, and then you'll see it on the highway side too. And then on the snow and ice side, we'll see a weather forecasting tool, precision weather.
Yep, I was gonna talk about that next. So a lot of towns around here are using it. It's precision weather forecasting. And what it does is it gives us a hyper local forecast for our town. When you look at an app on your phone, it's giving you a general area. These guys they're giving us road temperatures, they're giving us air temperatures, they're giving us, the snow's gonna start here, the snow's gonna stop here. You're gonna get this many inches between this time. They have a 24-hour meteorologist that you can call, and I actually used them during this storm.
I found it useful this past weekend when a lot of the media on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was this nor'easter is going to come up and blow off, and precision weather was like, it's out to sea. You're not going to actually get something.
So they give us every morning 2:00, they send a detailed forecast for the next 2 days. It's in the app, so Jeremy can see it, but you can also log in online. I get an email about it. When there's a storm, it goes from every morning at 2 a.m. to every morning at 2 a.m., every morning at 8 a.m., every morning or every afternoon at 2 p.m. and every evening at 8 p.m. And then as needed, if things come up and change that they're seeing, they'll send out more alerts for it.
I can give you props, all that stuff. I love the proactive nature of what you're doing there on the GPS and the weather. It's great.
And for I think a really reasonable cost, it was $1,600. We'll probably save that much in overtime in 2 events by having a better understanding of when we need people.
And
I mean, I don't even think about cost from this. I just think it's very forward thinking. And from a planning standpoint, it allows you to. So
and I can say that the fire chief as well as the deputy emergency management director have access to that weather forecast as well. And then it goes through the summer as well. Obviously,
For like heat waves. and
heat
stuff.
waves, thunderstorms, tornadoes, whatever's coming through, hurricanes, it's gonna
Like
give us that updated
Parks director get access during the summer for the beach, that kind of stuff.
So the town has access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how localized is it?
Zip code based, I believe.
Yeah. So
it's in the town.
Upton is using it and they get their own forecast, and Upton, for whatever reason, tends to get a little more snow than we do. It reflects that in
And
the,
this town always gets more.
yeah, Northbridge Road because of the bridge closure has been horrible this year.
That was my question about localized, if it gives you delineation between.
Like this is an effect of the federal government pulling a lot of the public NOAA data. And so we were just talking about this. It's very interesting. It's coming up again. But yeah, all of the weather data has been privatized because of that. And so this is kind of our only solution now, because your weather apps are going to be completely based.
There was another tool that we talked about, and we kind of made the decision that this would be a better one for right now, but there are weather stations that can be put out here with a camera, and I use the center of town. So you put one on this pole out here, and then you can look at it and say, okay, 3 o'clock in the morning, I can pull up the picture and say the roads are clear.
So you don't have to drive out.
So I don't have to drive out and look at it. It'll give me the road temperature. It gives me the air temperature, the wind speed. It gives me all of that in that picture. And then you can also put them in other places in town, and they're cheaper. They're just a camera. They're not a weather station. So you can see what's going on. And I had Providence Road and Northbridge Road would be my 2 other locations.
Sounds perfect for a grant for emergency preparedness.
So you can put it at certain intersections and.
You can spend as much money as you want and get as many as you want. I don't think that we need weather stations everywhere. I think that you've got to put them either here up at the lights, you put a weather station, the rest are just cameras so you can see. The cool thing about that is once you get into this service, I then can have access to everybody else in the state that's using this service. So if like Sturbridge is using these cameras, I can then look at their cameras to see how things are coming across the state.
As long as we're not processing that data and sending it to like a Flock service. I mean, that's all stuff I'd like to look more into.
It is not block.
But again, this is, like I said, we decided to go with the weather service this year, and then maybe next year we look into these cameras.
Yeah, so a lot of volume, a lot of hours. So I think historically, the board has taken a vote to allow the highway to deficit spend snow and ice. And this year we are going to deficit spend snow
We're
and ice.
already definitely.
Yes, it's two big red numbers.
And so, yeah, there's
So bottom, we are 12,000 in the red right now with all the numbers. Now, this equipment maintenance number is going to change because I still have bills that I have not received for the repairs that were done last week on a lot of things.
So this will be something that we can fund with free cash at annual town meeting. And then the request for next year on the snow and ice budget will just include the GPS and weather forecast increases. We can talk about it a little more during budget stuff for FinCom here, but generally I think our snow and ice budget, and to remind everybody, snow and ice is the one expenditure in which we could deficit spend so long as we have budgeted an equal or greater amount than the year prior. So you don't want to ramp it up to what your highest year budget is, because then you're tying up money in, non-severe winters. So I think we have a healthy budget right now. I think we can look to incremental increases in the future. But what 27 will look like is a level funded budget plus the known increases here.
So should we be looking to create a motion to deficit spend a specific amount, like 50 grand? Is that what
We did last year. We set up to a certain amount.
Yeah.
I'd be curious about, you got 2/3 salt shed full. What is that?
Yeah, how
Is
long
that
that
one
was?
storm?
And again, it depends on,
How long's it?
Yeah.
How long's a piece of string?
what kind of storm it is. It could be that, and we're gonna run into this as we start getting warmer temperatures and things melt during the day, and then they refreeze at night. The police are gonna call and say you need
How
some
many?
boats.
Can we ask what it, right? Can I have to go to the cost to fill up the salt shed for full load and to fill up the salt shed with current prices?
I don't know. off the
Like
top of
once
my head. I
one-third
can
our
tell you
capacity.
what we've spent so far.
Fill up for a load.
Load's about $3,000, right?
Yeah, so you're getting anywhere from 34 to 40 tons in a load to come in
So
there.
that's how they measure it by the ton.
Yeah, it's measured by the ton. So we're, right now, after looking at all of our numbers, we are at 1,800 tons this year for salt.
And one load to fill the salt shed is,
So it's a tractor trailer. So you probably fill 2 of our trucks with one load.
And how many
so how many
loads
tons
fit
the
in?
salt shed?
1,000.
1,000 tons if it's full.
Yeah.
So you're saying right now you're at 2/3.
2/3, right?
So you're at about 650 ton right now.
We are, so
At 8 truck.
you ask about an event. So this event that's coming in Friday night to Saturday, 2 to 4 inches, what's gonna happen is we're gonna go out and we're gonna pre-treat the roads. And then after the storm, we're gonna treat them again. And so these bigger storms, we're 3 loads per truck, 3.5 loads per truck.
Are you saving anything by drawing down this salt and then pushing and then filling it back up? Or is it beneficial to keep topping it off? It doesn't.
I think it's beneficial to keep topping off. Our cost doesn't change. Our cost, we are locked in
We're
at that.
fixed.
We're locked in at that rate, 79.47 a
We have
ton.
a cooperative purchasing
Yeah.
agreement where it's a per ton, there's not a freight in it.
Right, so you're talking about like, like if we had crazy amount of storms that might max out around 30,000, but like right now it's just based on the numbers you gave me, like we just spent the same amount of money in salt again. Right?
So
Like,
we had 22 events, $104,000. We are negative 27 for salt right now. Negative 27,000 for salt right now.
Did we start the season with a full shed?
And you keep the shed full because you never know when it's gonna run out.
And there was a couple of sleepless nights when they were like, well, we can't get you salt. I was like, oh, what am I gonna do? I called other towns and everybody was in the same boat.
In the end, then, given all that, what number are we looking for? Up to number. That's
What's your current deficit in the fund in 423?
13 is what I heard.
12.5.
12. So if a load of salt costs $3,000, and we're gonna spend, because we want to finish, and the reason I asked if you started the season, we want to finish the season
with a
with
full
a
load.
shed.
Yeah.
Because you have that early freeze in November.
Yeah.
So we want to get it back up. So 50 might even be low.
I think 50 is low. I honestly was gonna say 100
50 is good
because
for the month of February. Right?
you also gotta keep in mind, if you look at our hired equipment in this budget, we are in the red with that as well, and that is our plow contractors.
Well, I just want to know all in, because when I say up to a number, you can allocate it across those different line items. How you
I would say up to 100.
If you vote 50, we're going to come back and ask for.
I'd rather go 100, knowing for our free cash, we can still cover that.
Yeah.
And this has been an anomalous winter compared to the last 3 or 4.
Right.
Right, we have not spent anywhere near this amount.
And the idea is to come away with a full shed when it's coming out of the season, and be ready for next.
So we can also commit to an update in early March or something, but.
Oh, I will be keeping a close eye on this, and if you say 100 and then we're getting close to that, hey, we've gone through 100, then I'm gonna have to come back.
Because if you say 50, we're gonna have to come back.
I would almost guarantee that we'll be back doing this again if we say 50.
No, I want to do 100, but I also want to make sure when you think about the equipment, you're saying there's some things I haven't got yet. Once again, the proactive nature of, if you think you're gonna go over, I'd rather.
Yeah, like we're not gonna
Up
be
it again.
replacing a giant plow on a big truck or anything crazy like that, right? So
No, we're doing
Totally not.
I'm just saying, like,
You have to say it did.
time.
I said we're not.
I will say that one of our plows stopped working, and when we got into it, the electrical system, and it was completely fried. And that had to be replaced, and I haven't seen that bill yet. That had to be sent.
For the hydraulics. What part of the electrical?
So
Like in the truck part of the
the
electrical?
lights, the way that it was explained to me when I talked to the repair guy, he said that your plug was loose. And he said, what was happening is every time it made that connection, it would send 12 volts through.
It's like arcing.
Right. So it would send 12 volts through, and that 12 volts would hit the piece of electrical that needed 3 volts, and it would short it out, would fry it. So it just went through the whole system and did that.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion that we authorize superintendent to deficit spend up to $125,000?
I would accept that motion. We're looking for a second. Any discussion? Right, all those in favor? Aye. All those against? All right, Mr. Dudley, you have your up to $100,000. 125, my bad.
Well, you got, I wanted to give you an even 100 to go forward. You've got some pending, right?
Yep.
All right, yeah. Good job. Not spending the money, but like, good job.
I can't help that.
Right, it is nice to know that like everybody's comfortable with the job that's going on and like it's running how you want it to run. Like it's really nice to hear. So,
Definitely appreciate it.
all right, thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, John.
I'll take number 6, even though the chief's not here.
Yeah. Take number 6 for the appointment of Sean Glennon.
All right, so the Mendon Police Department about 2 years ago, I believe, started a cadet program. So it's kind of an extension of their internship program. The cadet program has it kind of builds a bench for the department in a time where public safety recruitment is strained. So one of the individuals who this board appointed at the last meeting, Harrison, I'm gonna try to say his last name. It came through the cadet program and just graduated the academy. So Sean Glennon is at Stonehill College right now and has been an intern since November 2024. And they're looking to appoint him as a cadet. So as a cadet, I don't have a payroll up now, but they receive a small hourly, reasonable hourly wage and do stuff like ride-alongs, of course, and other intern style activities, but also man the front desk, do cell attendancy things, and are an administrative addition to the department. And so Mr. Glennon comes recommended, sorry, I'm reading notes from Chief Kersey. He comes recommended from Nick Erskine, corporal in the department who oversees the program. Well liked by officers, carries himself professionally. He lives in Bellingham, knows the community, and he's finishing his senior year at Stonehill, and is interested in pursuing a career in this field. So as we look to backfill or add staff to the department, or even just regionally to build a bench of well-qualified professional public safety folks, I think this program's a great way to go about it. So the chief couldn't be here. Like I said, he's at his son's basketball game and wasn't able to attend, but supports this appointment as well.
Sounds great. Yeah, this program's been really awesome. The chief's been really working on getting these guys in there, and everybody loves Nick. So
Yeah, it's $25 per hour. Just texted by both Katie and Jen, so thank you both. to get that program.
all right, well, I'd be looking for a motion to appoint.
Make a motion to appoint Sean Glennon as a cadet to the Mendon Police Department at a rate of $25 an hour on a per diem basis.
Didn't want to say anything. Did I hear a second?
Yes.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Great, motion passes. Welcome Sean to the Mendon Police Department. Alrighty, let's talk about number 8, which is the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant for $100,000.
Yeah, so this is 100% through the efforts of our conservation agent.
Thank you, Isabella.
So it comes in 2 parts: distributable this month in $50,000, and distributable 1 year from now in $50,000. So it's a $100,000 grant to conduct a municipal vulnerability program planning process and implement a climate resilience seed project. So there is additional grant funding available afterwards once the seed project is identified and planned for. But this is one of those serial activities where we need to do this grant and this planning before we unlock the next step. So just to be very clear, after recent inquiries, any officer of the town may accept a grant. So Isabella can say, thank you very much for accepting this grant. It is up to this board to approve the expenditure of said grant. So typically the verbiage has been to accept the grant, but I would like the motion to say accept and expend the grant, and then authorize me to sign anything in relation to it.
Also, Isabella is looking for anybody who wants to join her working group on determining what that project might be. So if anybody's interested in that. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve and expend the municipal $100,000 municipal vulnerability preparedness grant, and to authorize the town administrator to administer that.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Great, motion passes. Again, thank you, Isabel, for going out and finding all this money for us.
Can we ask
Fantastic.
Isabella to summarize sort of what she's looking for in terms of participation for that working group?
Yep. Yeah, I will ask her tomorrow, and I'll circulate the group. Yeah.
All right, number 9 is about it's polling season. It's election season, sorry. And so this is just part of our annual duty of authorizing the chief. So I'd just be looking for someone to call up this motion.
So yeah, move, not recommend.
Oh,
I move that the select board authorize the police chief or the designee to assign the following police details to the 2026 calendar year elections and for any special election. Annual town election, May 19th, 2026, state primary election, September 1st, 2026, state election, November 3rd, 2026.
Second.
any discussion? So I'm just checking to see if this is in the memo, but we're also going to be testing,
So A is certificate. There's two motions.
Yeah. So the town clerk is also going to be testing some new back of house voting equipment at this May election, the town election, to get ready for the midterm elections, so that they're not testing that equipment at the midterm elections. So you shouldn't see anything different at the poll. She explained to me the machine should be exactly the same. It's just all the back end stuff has been upgraded so that we have more detail. So just letting everybody know that. And great, that's part of the discussion. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Great. So the other thing we need to do is number 10, we need to add vacancies to the annual town election ballot. So we talked about this a little bit when Parks was here, but essentially those two positions that we appointed people into go vacant in May. And so they need to go through the election process again, and we need to put those on the ballot. So I'd be looking for a motion that we add, that the town clerk add the following offices to the town election ballot to be held on May 19th, which would be Parks Commission for 2 years to fill a vacancy and Parks Commission for 1 year to fill a vacancy.
So,
Second.
so just so I can understand, so.
Yeah.
So the ballot is going to have Parks Commission for 3 years, Parks Commission for 2 years, Parks Commission for 1 year.
Right, where the 3 year is gonna have
The
the,
one that's going vacant anyway.
right,
And so people,
So there'd be 3 different seats.
one will be an incumbent.
But they'll have to, will they have to do, does anybody know, are they pulling papers separately for each one?
I believe so,
Yes.
Okay.
that's how it worked with the
Right.
select board. So yeah, I'm assuming.
Well, we
it's
had
the
it
same, but I
there-
think
well,
they
we had it
said.
Like
Discussion on
first, yeah, you either choose,
Right.
if somebody has chosen to go for the 2 year seat, you either choose to go against them on the 2 year
Right.
seat or run for the
Right,
1.
But-
and they.
but-
Go ahead.
By adding these on there, now what we have are 3 different races for 3 different seats. And
Yes,
people can pull papers for 1 or all 3 if they,
yes,
1, 2 or all 3 seats.
yes, and I don't know what the implications for that individual are if you try to run.
Well, for the board, it was if you win, for instance, somebody was to pull papers for all of them and win all of them, they have the choice of choosing the 1 year, the 2 year, or whichever one they want. But they can't take,
They can't take all three.
they can't make a quorum by themselves.
Can't just move to different.
That would be an interesting situation.
Unless they were a Rhode Island trooper,
Put
right?
on different hats.
Myself and Irene.
I mean, wouldn't we recommend that anyone who's pulling papers really should choose one and stay in that lane? Because if you were to pull both of these and you won both of them, you choose the 2 versus the 1 year remains open because it doesn't have to default to the runner.
Right,
Well, it does.
so,
It does?
It does.
I thought we had to appoint them in
Yeah,
that case.
No, but it ultimately,
Ultimately, we would appoint that
we
one.
would, right,
We would.
but
Or we discuss it.
We would discuss it, and my assumption is,
so I, yes, I would say there's also a difference between pulling papers and returning them.
yes.
So, because I know that I pulled
That's a good point.
papers for a couple different positions and then I ended up only returning 1. So I decided not to run against you, Mike. That's There was that moment when I'm like, but the 1 year, it's only 1 year. So then I ran to the 3.
yeah, I don't know, made me think that, yeah, a little overview on how elections run might be a useful, at least a
Great.
little doodad for a
Yeah, I
future
don't know
meeting.
if we could invite the town clerk.
Town clerk would love.
Yeah,
I think it would be interesting and probably valuable for us to
I
do
think
that.
it would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, all right, so we'll consider that for an upcoming meeting. Okay, so town administrator, number 11, budget schedule.
We have to vote. We only made a motion a second. I don't think we voted.
Did we not vote? Shoot. Well, if we didn't vote and we did have a motion for second, I know that for sure, and I'm not gonna rewind the tape, so All those in favor of number 10, adding vacancies to the annual town election ballot, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? All right, motion passes, maybe twice. Sorry, I need some sort of like cue that tells me what state of the motion we're in when we have a long discussion. I have to think about that, because I get distracted. All right, so budget update. We have some dates, right?
Yeah, so I've received everybody's budget back.
Budget dates
Yeah.
and budget.
I've received I've received all department heads' budgets back and compiled them into a budget document. And then I've received, so thank you, Katie, for setting up the poll, the online poll about people's availability. There are two things that I think are going to delay us from meeting next week, which I'm about to talk about. One is that we are only one meeting into our negotiation with the town hall union. I don't love the idea of discussing where we're at budgetarily and affordability when we have an open union negotiation going on. And two, I've only been able to meet with about a third of the department heads to go through their budget requests just because we're on a compressed timeline. So I've started scheduling things for next week to meet with folks, mainly so I can ask the questions that I anticipate that you'll ask, and that I can understand what it is that they're asking for in advance to be able to explain it to you. So I think meeting next week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is kind of not advisable. I don't think it would be useful for people's time. And there are a couple people, at least two people, no, only one person, who said they couldn't meet next week anyway. But then looking at the 17th and 18th, and then 23rd, 24th, 25th. So that would be 5 evenings. My approach is to take the big ones, which are BVT, MURSD, police, and fire, and kind of put those on 4 different nights. I will telegraph that police is not really asking for much outside of a level service budget. So that actually, even though it's a large dollar value, I don't think will be a difficult discussion. So pairing that with highway, I think is a reasonable evening. So to have 4 nights worth of discussions.
There's no capital plans happening this year.
I meet with capital tomorrow night. Capital planning is tomorrow night. So generally, I want capital to align with special town meeting, but because we had so much free cash kind of left over after special town meeting because of the timing of certification of free cash, I anticipate there being some capital at annual town meeting, some requests coming forward to this board after capital meets this week, and I anticipate probably within the next 2 weeks. And that being said, because there's the free cash available, it will be capital funded through free cash. I don't foresee a lot of capital funded through the operating budget. The types of capital we see in the operating budget are things that I am really excited about building in as a recurring expense. Like we've got, I think, $3,000 in the library budget for furniture refresh. So this is a thing where like our chairs are 10 years old, we need new chairs. And we haven't had this sort of thing. So just keeping this line in the library budget, and like this year's chairs, next year's tables, the year after that it's monitors, and then it's, you know, whatever, to build that into our operation budget. That doesn't get to our capital threshold, but it's
replacing
a series of one-time
Yeah.
things.
It's good practice.
Yeah, certainly. So that's kind of that's where I'm at here. We're in a I think a solid spot, not in a super robust spot, but we're I don't, you know, this board's not going to have a lot of difficult decisions in terms of, you know, there's not cutting that we're looking at. We're looking at, do we want to add A or B sorts of things. I'm interested in what, so the school's question from the 3 perspectives are interesting. One, Norfolk Aggie. So right now, Like I said, in our last meeting, we went from 8 students in fiscal 25 to 6 students in fiscal 26. And of those 6 students in fiscal 26, 3 of them are seniors. But we've had 8 applications from Mendon students for Norfolk Aggie for either 9th or 10th grade. So it's that 2-part arithmetic problem, which is why we're so off in the budget this year to our advantage. But it's that 2-part arithmetic problem of what's the tuition and what's the amount of students, and we don't know either of those things right now. So we're looking at roughly level funding that until we can get a little bit more information, but we have the exposure of 3 students graduating, 8 students coming on, and seeing 5 additional students in our Norfolk Aggie tuition. On our Blackstone Valley Tech budget, the way, and this is not unique to BVT, the way that school minimum local contributions are determined and Chapter 70 funding is allocated is on your October 1st enrollment. So October 1st, 2025 determines what the minimum local contribution and Chapter 70 allotment is in spring of 26 for fiscal 27. So I say that to say the lottery system that's been prescribed by the state legislature is not going to have any sort of impact or any sort of effect on our fiscal 27 budget because it's keyed off of our October 1st, 2025 enrollment. And that enrollment in October of 2025 at BVT is 1 student lower than it was in October 2024. 75 students to 74 students. So something like 22 students graduated and only 21 were in the freshman class, or some students moved out or whatever it was. So our assessment, I again don't know quite what their per student tuition assessment is going to be, but our census is down 1. And I will request that Superintendent Steele, who this board knows from his role as assistant superintendent, will come in and present, but the kind of 60-second version on the lottery system is that they are not required, but have done so, and I think in a reasonable way, an apportionment where they say it's not just a lottery system where we throw every applicant into a drum and spin around and pick it out. We say, what does each town represent from either their 8th grade population or combination of their 8th grade population and overall population? What do they represent of our 13 town community? And what's their proportional slice of that? And then do a lottery for that. So the lottery for Mendon students will just be other Mendon students. But our proportional share of BVT enrollment for a freshman class is about, or for overall is about 50 students, not freshmen, overall enrollment is about 50 students, 51 students. And our current enrollment is 74. So over the next 5 to 10 years, as they apply this apportioned lottery system, we will see Mendon's enrollment in BVT reduced by about 1/3. So the marginal cost for BVT will obviously go down. And then that, or relative to what it otherwise would have done. And then that those Chapter 70 dollars will follow those students back into MURSD or,
But it could also push up Norfolk Aggie enrollment.
So they are also under the lottery system.
That's what I was wondering.
And we are an outside community, and how those districts treat outside communities in their lottery is not prescribed by state statute.
So they can just choose.
Yeah, so we can lose all sorts of,
I said we could have a fixed number.
But we-
For planning purposes.
but also outside students pay a premium compared to inside students, so they may be incentivized to, it's a lot of TBD. But what we see is the marginal, imagine we'll see is the marginal cost of a BVT student, we'll see that assessment go down. And then when it's not universal, but then when they're reabsorbed, or a better way to say it is not lost by MURSD, the marginal cost of keeping that student or adding that student is kind of less, right? You add 1 more student, you don't need to add a 9th grade teacher.
Yeah, but you're adding a whole classroom. You potentially adding a whole classroom full of students to the school.
So the pieces too, we also have people at private schools who live in Mendon who are applying to BVT, and they might stay at.
the private school.
Yeah, so it's one, it's an unknown right now, and then two, even when it does happen, it will be a murky cost avoidance that's not totally apparent on how you ascribe that savings. So I think it's generally a positive budgetary wise. I don't know that it's a positive student experience wise for residents of Mendon.
Are we gonna see BVT, they had some capital work that we chose not to take debt on and just pass it through pass it through their budget ask. Is that gonna come through this year?
Yeah.
Or the rest, like
For the
60
roof.
something?
Yeah, I met with them for almost 2 hours last week, and they did not have a number to tell me what that's going to be, but that will be in this assessment, is their anticipation.
They had numbers for us when we decided to do it that way.
Right.
And so their thing is about if they're gonna go short this year versus. Actually, when I was walking in and getting my pass to go meet the superintendent, there was a line of roofing company representatives in front of me. So they were there too. And I was like, it's 12 degrees out and I'm going in the office and you're going on the roof, so this is.
Can you remind me, did a majority of the 13 towns pass the additional,
Yes,
so now they have 2 different savings accounts?
they have E&D and their capital stabilization, yep. And so I had said to the superintendent, a little bit flippantly, but, we don't call out BVT's budget as its own warrant article, right? It's just part of the general budget. But if our assessment includes, if our, budget request from BVT includes an assessment for a capital stabilization, I will recommend it be its own budget or own warrant article. Because they stood up there and said, you're not going to get an additional assessment for this. So he said that's not going to be the case. So we'll take him at his word for it right now.
Interesting.
But anyway, and so that's the BVT side, and that is probably fractionally more expensive budget to budget this year, just because individual tuition assessments will go up. Even though we lost one student, and Norfolk Aggie is kind of a TBD, but I talked about budget to budget will be okay, because we were so under budget in our assessment this year. MURSD had a budget subcommittee meeting tonight. Mike, Superintendent Maureen, and their CFO, or Finance Director Jay, met earlier today to kind of go through it. As a reminder, our fiscal 25 to 26 assessment for MURSD went up $0, which we knew is not sustainable. And we put in a spacer, so to speak, of $50,000, saying we don't want that to get eaten up. And I have in our projections now about a $560,000 increase for MURSD, which is in the 4% range. They're looking at right now, and this is not finalized in any event, but they are looking at a greater than $2 million increase for our assessment, which is we can come up with a little more than $560,000. We cannot come up with $2 million, $2.2 million. So
I mean, just to be clear, that is very, very
preliminary. Yeah.
That they're not, that's the number as is, but they also, I came from a subcommittee meeting for this. That's up 2 other scenarios. So they are clearly focused on reducing expenses. They're just trying to understand how to do it, but the number is going to be more than what we have in our budget.
Yeah, that's
Did they give you what the other 2 scenarios are? Do they know that?
Say what?
Did they give you what the numbers for the other 2 scenarios are?
Yeah, I mean, they have a target to try to get it down to about 1.5, I think, to us,
so
which the 500, Jeremy, is part of that. So about $1 million more than what's in our.
So I don't have experience with this, but in talking with Jay about it, the schools don't actually ask for the override. They submit their budget.
Yeah.
Should the town pass it, we then have to figure it out. So should the town pass it, that would require an override, or, draconian cuts.
So this would be May that we're talking about,
Yeah.
which would then also affect the ballot
Certainly.
Yep.
So, yeah, what are, it'd be good to know what the deadlines are that we're gonna bump into.
So after I had this meeting this morning where seemed much more, I don't want to say a certainty, but much more of a possibility on operational override for school recurring expenditures. I need to talk to the town clerk about exactly what you're talking about, and she's at a town clerk conference for today and tomorrow. So I'll reach out to her on Friday on the machinations of that. But really, we talked about, 2.2 being their $2.2 million increase being their ceiling at their current level, and $560,000 as to what's in our budget currently, and understanding that it's some number in between there, and how do we get there?
So I'm wondering, can MURSD go early in the budget? I just feel like the community's gonna wanna hear about this earlier, like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, having been through this before from the other side, I was not on this board, but we're going to be hearing a lot. So I think that getting the word out.
That was one of the school's concerns and questions, and like, if this is something the town was forward with, like, how do we communicate our message? Because they are also sensitive to the fact that it's a possible operational override on the heels of a debt exclusion. And while those things are separate and distinct operationally, they have the same impact on homeowners and taxpayers. So they're, I think, rightly and reasonably sensitive to that. So they're also concerned. So to answer your narrow question, yes, I would like to have them earlier because I think they also would like to be earlier. Their budget hearing is not until March 12th or something, March 19th, something like that.
But it sounds like we're at a bare minimum needing to come up with a $500,000 of some sort
So I think we can,
from someplace.
I think we could likely meet them a quarter of the way and make it manageable within our budget. But
they'd be.
even if they got to halfway, we don't have that ability. And then, so they're talking about, at that point, talking about not just not filling and not doing things. They're talking about cutting things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even at the target, health is blowing them out of the water.
Right,
completely.
the health
It's a $2
insurance
million
cost. Yeah.
increase in health insurance.
It's like,
Sorry, what amount? Sorry, say that
$2
again.
million.
That,
So they had like, what was it, like 15 people coming out.
16 people took insurance.
Yeah, that was not in their initial projection.
They usually target a certain number to
Like
jump
young
on,
people came
but
in.
it's like 3 times the
Yeah,
number.
so exactly. So they budgeted for 5, right? It's a known unknown.
Right.
We budget for 5 to come on, and 15 or 16 came on.
And
At
that's
30 grand a pop, and then at,
plus
And
premiums.
and that's on top of, they've been telegraphing for the last couple years that this was coming, that they've been using some reserve funds.
I mean, they've been telling us, but it's not like telling us allows us to grow more money.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, but I mean,
And the town's gonna be just as surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot is uncontrollable when you look at the numbers.
Mhm.
And I think, I mean, the health just screams at you. I mean, between just contractual salaries and health, that's like over $3 million of the
Right.
increase.
I mean, that's not reasonable, but it's at least explainable.
yeah, it's not, administrative excess.
Yeah, right.
And like we said, when we did this budget, this 26 budget year, it's just so frustrating that you're just paying more money for the exact same service. Like you're not.
Right, and the fact that you're paying more money for it makes staff, not utilize it as much because they're fearful of cost, and then the costs get ramped up because they don't use the healthcare. Like it all snowballs up on itself, and I wish we could provide some relief, but it seems like we just keep doing this stepwise function every few years.
So the schools actually had seen for fiscal 27 a 4% increase in their health insurance premiums, which is which is really good. If any of you went to the Maya breakfast, that's like the bottom of the range for what Blue Cross Blue Shield plans we're seeing. The top of the, it was 3%, but the top of the range is 14%. So this is part of the budget update, I guess. So last year, so for the current fiscal year, this time last year.
Are you going into 13?
No, this is a budget update for 11. Last year, the range of medical premium increases was 9 to 20%, and we were 19.9.
Yeah.
And this year, the range is 2.9 to 14%. So I have 13% in our what we're carrying here. Jen O'Neill and I are meeting with Maya. She just texted me, so I probably said something wrong. 19.92.
Okay.
We're meeting with Maya in 2 weeks or so. Don't text me, Jen. In the next couple of weeks, to determine what our actual premium increase is. But today I met with a broker, and I have another meeting with a broker just to kind of transmit all our data and say, hey, if you put this in the market, what are we looking at? Two of our collective bargaining agreement contracts have really strict language on any changes to medical insurance. We need to notify the union and impact bargain with them. The result of that could be there's no impact to you and we don't have to make any changes, but we are under the obligation to do so. One of our unions is totally silent on that, and the other one is we only have to impact bargain for a share of the premium. So if we change the 75-25 split, but there's nothing about the plan design change. It seems to me that if we are going to bargain with two of our unions and not the other two about plan design changes, we should bring in the other two unions to say, this is what we're doing, and like get them along with the project. But so right now we're exploring the possibility of insurance changes for fiscal 2027. It's not likely just because of our time frame. We're in February, we do April or May open enrollment, and we'll see. But we certainly want to know what the alternatives are. And we are also competitively reprocuring our property and casualty insurance, which have seen way more reasonable premium increases. That's not the runaway stuff that health insurance is. But I think it's healthy for us to go back out to the market every once in a while and say and for the board's edification, procurement of insurance is exempt from 30B in the same way that solid waste and recycling collection is exempt from 30B. So you don't have to competitively compare those things, but they're huge expenses. So even just threatening to reprocure them usually results in some cost savings. So that's where we're at on budget. I will message finance committee first thing tomorrow morning. So next week, I'm going to do my internal meetings next week, and we are not.
So we're not adding any meetings next week.
So
And
no.
then after that,
Yeah, probably 4 to 5 in the next 2, and then a couple, at the end of March, or probably the beginning of April, maybe even once we get, Senate and a House budget, and can refine a little bit more. And hopefully then have a town hall union. So that's the one union that we don't have an agreement with. We have town hall union, collective bargaining MOA to bring this group. We have a police MOA that it just needs to be reviewed by myself and the chief before we send it over there. But that should be hopefully at the second February meeting, we'll have a police MOA to approve. I was going to say, so number 12.
So number 12.
Last meeting, I did kind of an expenditure update on quarter 2. I want to do a revenue update now. Tech Day was Monday and not everything. So it seemed a little silly to do a Q2 revenue update and then say, but we have all this tax revenue that we collected on Monday and don't yet have posted to the ledger. So I'm gonna push this off to the next meeting and say, once we have everything posted, to get a better sense of what it'll be Q3 really, but what our revenue picture looks like, just because there's, and to remind everyone how tax bills work, and this will be in my update, but in our newsletter, we have an FAQ with the treasurer collector that your tax bill for, you get preliminary tax bills for Q1 and Q2, which is, the second half of the calendar year. And what that is whatever you paid in taxes the previous fiscal year, we divide that by 4 and then multiply it by 1.025, probably 2.5. And then say that's your preliminary tax bill for the first 2 quarters. And then once we set our tax rate through the tax recap process in November and December, we get our final tax bills and send those out by the end of December. And then we say, whatever your total tax liability for the year is, we net out whatever you paid in your preliminary, and whatever's left, we divide that by 2, and that's your Q3 and Q4. So folks' tax bill looks different in the second half of the fiscal year because we have a tax rate that we know about. If we didn't have any excluded debt, the noise between that would be very little. But because we have excluded debt that may fall off, or does fall off between one year and the next, your preliminary tax bill may not be wholly representative of what your final tax bill is. And that works in the positive for the taxpayer, where it goes down when debt falls off, and then it works the other way around, where when debt comes on that wasn't contemplated the year before, your final tax bill is going to be considerably higher, noticeably higher than your preliminary tax bill is. So anyway, I want to get all that information in before I give an actual revenue update.
All right, number 13, let's set the annual town meeting warrant and date of the town meeting. I'd be looking for a motion to open the warrant today, and then.
So also, I think there should be a motion to set the town meeting date. I would say that. So,
Yeah, there should be another one.
So I talked with both, or not both, all of the schools availability, moderator, clerk, council, and the 12th, which is the second Tuesday in May, works. I said this, I think I said this last meeting, I've said it in other meetings, that it's the opinion of both the town clerk and I that setting this kind of Tuesday cadence where you have town meeting and then election afterwards makes as much sense as anything else. And I don't know, selfishly, it's not a Friday. So it would be my anticipation that as long as I have a say in things, that I would say the second Tuesday in May is a good cadence for annual town meeting.
Well, I'll make a motion to set the annual town meeting date for May 12th, 2026.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? And then motion to open the warrant.
I'll move to open the May 12th, 2026 annual town meeting warrant February 4th, 2026. And the warrant will close on April 16th, 2026, 4 p.m. tentatively.
That is 3 weeks plus the week before, the Thursday before town meeting. So we need to close the warrant 3 weeks before town meeting, and then instead of doing that on that Tuesday, we close it the Thursday before.
Second.
And we need to have it open for, sorry, I stepped on a second. We need to have it open for a reasonable amount of time. So February 4th to April 16th seems a very
More than reasonable.
Generous, yeah.
Discussion is more than reasonable. Anybody else have anything to add? All those in favor? Aye. All those against? All right. See you at the annual town meeting on May 12th. All right, Mr. Administrator, would you like to do the bylaw review? This was sent out to you all 2 days ago to review before tonight. And Jeremy will tell you about what he adjusted from the last time we chatted.
Yeah.
Do you want me to share it?
So we discussed this in the middle of December. The substantive pieces of it were around the appointing authority. There we go. So I redline changes from what, purple line is. What we talked about before. So just hiring authority, it's referred to as appointing authority later, so I want that clarity. It's just a reference.
It's right on my screen. Save.
Is it red? Is it purple? Oh, it's purple. So this is, so we did get some comments from a member about when there's a vacancy, how prescriptive this bylaw should be about how that's filled. Should the bylaw say that the select board shall appoint a screening committee? Does it need to be 5? Screening committee shall recommend 3, so a little bit more dive into how prescriptive we want this to be, or should we just say a vacancy in town administration shall be filled as pursuant to select board.
I'd go the latter, because I'm one who said I don't want to be tied into a screening committee. Having done both ways, I think that should be the option for the sitting board to decide how they want to.
You weren't here for when we had your screening committee, but this was a long discussion and went back and forth in different ways. And it's hard to know what any of these ways are that work. So I wouldn't want to restrict a future board. So you could say, you could recommend, right? Because we also didn't even know what past boards had really done. So we could recommend it and put it in a guideline, but I don't know that it needs to be.
I mean, I pushed the screening committee because I had done it the other way. And after screening,
What is the other way?
we just.
Where it comes to those.
Based on, that a third party brought forward 3 candidates that we literally interviewed.
And with the screening committee, the third party kind of guides the screening committee.
Yeah. But I think, if I were to do it again, I'd probably do a screening committee. Because I don't think the committee itself was necessarily where I kind of said, there's other things, but I think getting input from a committee makes sense. I just want to understand it's going to dictate to the board.
Right.
So it's more of how you institute the committee is what I would probably.
Well, what are we protecting against by saying these numbers? Protecting against a board just appointing a 2-person committee or something? And
Well, I would not presume to tell another board that I'm not a member of how they should hire a TA.
yeah, I agree.
Okay with it being a recommendation versus a shall.
I think it's a good idea to have a screening committee. Maybe you don't want to specify the number of people, the makeup of it, but I think it's a great idea to have that degree of separation.
Yeah.
The board appoints a screening committee, and the screening committee interviews, and then.
You feel comfortable making that decision for future boards?
Yeah,
Yes, I absolutely do, because I think it's a mistake not to have it go that way.
Because once you get this bylaw, you'll have 95 applicants for your next opening. So does the board want to see every applicant?
No.
Yeah, I think the way that we do it, my recommendation is that we do have an appointed screening committee. Maybe we don't dictate to the board how many on the committee or how the process is, but I think we do recommend that it's us.
Basically prevent the
From
board
us,
from doing a
rule
direct.
from the select board to have a committee of citizens that screen the applicants. I think that's a good idea. Maybe we don't tell the board to hire a third party and all of the other mechanics of it, but I think specifying that we have a committee of citizens that help choose it, I think is wise.
So one of the nice things about bylaws like this, you can truncate this paragraph to say vacancy in the position of town administrator shall be filled as follows. Select board shall appoint a screening committee, and then just get rid of all the specifics. And then say, after receiving recommendations, the board shall appoint town. So you can you don't have to say who's on, you all can be the screening committee.
So-
That's
could be-
exactly my point.
So it could be employees and not Mendon residents if you took that out.
I think it needs to be Mendon residents.
Now you're getting into choosing for the board though.
Yeah.
Well, I think Well, everything, every policy, we set up everything else, and not to say that another board couldn't change the bylaw, but I think it's a good idea to say
probably
that
not
we have
while they're looking
many
for
residents.
Town administrator.
What's that?
I'm sorry, they couldn't change it while they're looking for a town administrator.
No, which is exactly which is my point.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. to
No,
have-
I mean, like, yeah, I want the residents on. Why did, and we allowed employees on, right? Wasn't
Ellen
that
was-
town clerk?
Ellen was, but she's all the residents.
She was
Well, there was, no, our interim town administrator was on the screening,
he was,
not yours. Okay.
they may have sat in, but they didn't.
Oh, they
they
were
not.
just not a voting member. Oh, okay.
But your third-party consultant center was at the screening committee. It was not a,
Right.
I think.
Consists of a
Yeah,
majority
a
of
different third-party consulting firm for the previous hire, and it was a much different experience. I don't, I'll defer. I just don't think we should.
All right, so what I'm hearing is that we agree on putting the steering committee in there.
Screening committee.
Sorry, screening committee in there. And then on the resident portion, do you want to say a majority of residents or all residents?
Get rid of the number, is that what you're saying?
Just say residents.
Well, I'm saying majority because that allows somebody else besides the residents to be on the committee. That's why I'm using
Well,
that word.
I think, well, I think you could say a resident doesn't preclude an employee. So screening committees do have the chief of police as part.
Right, I don't want to exclude that if the board wants
Right.
that.
But you would want them to be, I think, Mike, you're saying you want them to be a resident versus somebody from Uxbridge choosing,
So I
Okay.
had volunteered my services to Upton to be part of their screening committee when they were looking for a new town administrator. And what I was told was our bylaw, which
Mhm.
is this,
Mhm.
doesn't allow me as a non-resident to be part of it.
Uh,
So
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
Were you sad about that?
I mean, it was a thing I didn't have to do. So but like, I thought I could have been, we regional partners and all that.
Yeah.
It was like,
Right.
but
All right, so I understand this.
and I don't.
You don't even care about the resident part.
No, I would want a committee made up of the best people the board at the time can find that have some potential, professional background in this, things like that. I don't know. I don't like to limit the pool necessarily.
there's also a difference between a bylaw tying the hands of a future board and a policy tying the hands of a future board. Policy, you vote to change. A bylaw, you tell me to change.
Right.
That's the whole point, because it goes to the townspeople, so everybody gets a voice.
All right, well, then it says the screening committee, and we need to adjust the select board policies and procedures for hiring.
Do we need to vote on this? If we're not in agreement,
Which part?
the screening committee.
The screening committee?
I mean, so just to review our options.
Yeah.
We can leave in the screening committee sort of as is with no less than 5 Mendon residents. We can leave in a screening committee, but not specify anything about the makeup of that. Or is there a way to,
The middle road is
Have it be-
specifying residents, but not doing.
like, right, so that should include a majority of Mendon residents or something? I mean, that
I
would be.
mean, I like that language because it's very subjective.
The way I read that too, it says select board shall appoint a committee of no less than 5 Mendon residents, but it doesn't mean that you can't have 7 people
I
in the
see.
committee. It just means 5 of them have
That's
to be
true.
residents.
That's
You could
true.
add 2 others if you wanted to, because you thought that they had a specific, for instance, if you hired a company,
Mhm.
you could make a representative of that company
Right.
part of the screening committee.
As long
But
as,
you're gonna have at least 5 Mendon residents on that committee.
right.
So
So
I
is
don't
that
think that was the
Upton?
intent of the language, but you're totally right. And
Yeah, is that
Yeah, so-
what Upton had? Because maybe,
This is the word for word.
okay, so maybe they were.
So Mike has now gained the bylaw
Mhm.
and we have to,
To say there's gonna be 30
Explain.
consultants.
I mean, if you wanna put a number on it,
right, okay, so explain that way, that makes plenty of
What
sense.
about a screening committee including no less than 5 Mendon residents?
well, that's the
Yeah.
distinction without a difference. I think it's still,
Mm.
I would like to strike the 3 qualified residents because we had or 3 qualified candidates because there were
I
times.
know there
we
were
got
times
too
when they
bad.
had 2,
Yeah,
and
I don't,
yeah.
yeah, I think I would.
I wouldn't want to restrict that.
That seems reasonable.
All right, so
You say like 5 to 7 member committee with a majority being residents or something like that.
I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean,
it's just rewording it so that it's more understandable. I
I'm
don't
getting in on the committee here.
changes.
that way it doesn't mean you have to have 7.
Right.
You have to have at least 5.
Right.
You could have 7.
Could have 7, could have 13. But
No, that's not.
well, we're having a problem right now.
But that makes the point about having a maximum number.
How many did we have? Like this last time, was it
8 or
7?
I was gonna say, it was a 4.
Yeah, it was bigger.
I thought it was 5 plus the chair and the chair.
I was gonna say, it felt like at least 7.
I
It was
think
like
it might
8 because I thought it was the 5, plus it was the consultant, plus it was the acting town administrator.
So I will say you had multiple screening committees, and by the time I was screened, the interim town administrator was not part of the assessment. The consultant was kind of not at the table in the room, kind of taking minutes. And there was, it felt like more than 5. I don't recall it. Town clerk could probably.
I think Jim Purcell took the place of the.
Jim, Bill, from the Board of Health, Joyce, Alan.
We had Sean Nicholson and Phil, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I feel like it was more than 5 there.
All right,
It was a Saturday morning. I got dressed up in a suit to leave my house on
Well,
Saturday.
you could always say 5 with the majority of the community made of town residents.
So
yeah,
we're
that's
a
what it
screening
says.
committee of 5 to 7 members with at least a majority being Mendon residents.
all right, you guys want to take a little mini vote?
After receiving recommendation, committee, the board shall appoint a town administrator to recommend candidates.
I mean, I don't know why we gotta say that, but
It's like
I mean, of course we will.
I'm counting 7 names plus the 2 consultants.
If you get rid of the word at least and just say with a majority. Doesn't mean they can't all be Mendon residents, but.
All right,
All right, well,
Yeah, so I mean, so that would be fewer than what we had before. So I don't know, I don't know. Maybe the consultants weren't part of the committee, they were just sort of listed.
you could put about in front of 5. I'm just, I think that the next select board's gonna do whatever they want.
You're gonna just say a committee of 7 and get rid of the 5. Although I think it might be, could be tough in some cases to get 7.
a committee of a majority of Mendon residents.
Yeah, I don't like, I like back to just, having a majority.
Right. Of a size to be.
We're gonna
voted
vote on
by
it here in a
the
second.
Yeah.
time.
I mean, in the end, the intent here in this bylaws, we think best practice is to have a screening committee.
Yes,
Let's not get into the details about how the
Yeah.
composition of that committee.
And what
Right.
the board say, do we want 5, 7, 13 or whatever?
yeah.
Right,
let's
yeah,
fix it.
can-
Discretion of
yeah,
the
So the
composition will
select-
be made at the discretion of the current sitting board of select.
I think that would be
So
reasonable.
the
I like
select board
that.
shall appoint a screening committee comprised of a majority of Mendon residents.
Mhm. Then it leaves it open the number.
Right, because a majority, if you have 3, is 2, right? Like they can pick whatever they want.
Maybe
You can have 11 of 11 be Mendon.
Right, like
Good.
some future select board could have just not enough people willing to step up.
Well, I'm just glad that no select board in Mendon's got to deal with this for a good
A lot.
5 to 8 years, I'm sure.
20, 30 years.
I'll second that.
All right, so,
And now to the easier point of appointing authority.
wait, go back up, because we had a lot of talk on that one. And so Mike's right, we should vote on that. So, I would like to, put forward a motion to accept the changes for this paragraph as written.
Second.
Any discussion?
Let me just reread it.
All right.
So a
added-
screening committee with a majority being Mendon
Shall appoint
residents.
a screening committee with a majority being Mendon residents.
with the majorities.
So it feels like weird wording to me, but
say comprised of.
Grammar's for the lawyers and the linguists.
I like that.
okay, all right, yeah.
And I added this down here. The board may at its discretion instead request screening committee submit additional candidates. So I said repost the job posting or appoint a new screening committee in that like, if the screening committee got 10 applicants and they gave you 3 and you're like, I don't want them, you know, like give me one of the other 7. It's like, well, no, we want to go back out.
To end with 4 now.
For such purposes, there's some weird
So it's not crossed out. That's just a
No,
weird
that's-
artifact of word.
of being track changes. I don't know.
Okay.
It's been overstacked. Okay, so, all those in favor? All those against? Right. All right, Jeremy, appointing.
So I took the 15-day waiting thing out because I thought it was kind of toothless for the town administrator to be able to appoint people and then the board say, but they can't actually start until we vote on it. And I'm like, well, that's just you being the appointing authority, which is kind of what I took from the discussion before.
Yeah.
So what I said here was the town administrator shall be the hiring authority for all employees under the jurisdiction of the board, except as exempted below. So the board retains appointing authority for the following positions. Town administrator, it says that other places in here, but I just wanted to, suspenders it. Police chief, fire chief, full-time police officers, full-time firefighters, highway superintendent, senior center director. And then I went through essentially department heads, exactly. We don't currently have a finance director, but I want to kind of future-proof this. And then say, and any retitle positions from this list which maintains the essential functions of the role. So if we make it a human resources director or make it a inspectional services, director of inspectional services, I didn't want to tie it to the title. I want to tie it to the, not the letter, but the spirit. So this is department heads
Right.
plus police officers and fire.
So
Road operations director, ATA.
Well, ATA actually is a good point, because that might be coming, so.
yeah.
So yeah, I didn't delineate that because I wanted the ability of the town administrator to appoint the assistant town administrator.
So is the assessor appointed by the Board of Assessors?
The library director is appointed by the Taft trustees. Parks commissioner is appointed by the Parks Commission. Parks director is appointed by the Parks Commission. The health agent is appointed by the Board of Health. The water clerk is appointed by the Water Commission, which makes that union where you have an individual appointed by 3 different appointing authorities and 1 40-hour-a-week role. Not ideal. But we're going through that right now in negotiations. And then I also put in here as appointed by the board, town council, building inspector, and town accountant. They are not full-time employees. They are firms or individuals that we appoint on a part-time basis, but they are akin to a department head. So I want to keep that with the select board. Additionally, especially on town council and building inspector and town accountant, all 3 of those. Those are things the board appoints annually. This past year, the board opened up reappointments to commissions and committees to say, I want you to re-express your affirmative interest in being in this position. And I think that would, I think it would be beneficial to do that for these positions as well, to not just say our town accountant is going to continue to be our town accountant, but say, hey, we need a town accountant. Do you want to apply that same logic to these positions? And then, so as such, the town administrator shall be appointing authority for all their positions not listed here, including all part-time and seasonal positions under the jurisdiction of the board. I say part-time and seasonal, so there are seasonal positions not under the jurisdiction of the board, like counselors for the Kids Us program, but things like recycling center attendant and on-call firefighters.
Can I ask, is it acceptable under Mass General Law to designate you the appointing authority, or should we have the language that the select board or the appointing authorities delegate the authority to the town administrator. In other words, I'm not saying that it's not fine to have you do it, but I'm just saying, does it conflict with Mass General Law where using the language that the appointing authority designates the authority to the town administrator for these positions? I don't know. I'm asking the question.
So there are,
Because we're pre-delegating, is that what you're asking?
What I'm saying is, if there's a law that says that some of these positions shall be appointed by, and they designate the appointing authority. If we put the language in there, basically the
Right, are we
bylaw designates or defers that appointing authority to the town administrator. So
understood your question on the second time. So one, I don't believe there's law that says so like select board shall appoint, right? There are city and town administrators who are the appointing authority for the police chief, right? And all these positions. So putting that in the town administrator's purview is not uncommon or contradictory. And this is narrow in that all the ones that would rise to the level of MGL caring about it at all, mainly police and fire chief, those are the only ones who have. I think
yeah,
there might
because
be
strong
some-
chief, weak chief, right?
The police chief, fire chief have MGLs that speak to them, but like there's no MGL that speaks to the veterans agent who appoints that.
I just don't know. That's why I was asking.
I guess I don't know specifically. I know the two positive answers. I don't know all the negative ones. But
This will get lawyered.
we will just, that's my next point. We'll just run this through council.
Great, great.
Yeah.
So before it even goes to the general bylaw review committee, so my serial events here were to get select board buy-in, and then go through council and then present it to general bylaw review committee saying, you know, the policy and the legal people have already signed off on this. So what this does is say non-department heads are at the town administrator, department heads are at the select board, and future variations of department heads at the select board. But you're right in that I wrote this to not mention, but to be inclusive of the town administrator being the appointing authority for the assistant town administrator.
That makes sense.
And so like the executive assistant as well. So another question kind of, so if we have an interim town administrator, how does this apply? Is that a different position because it's not town administrator,
Yeah,
interim town administrator?
So
So they would not necessarily be an appointing authority.
Distinction.
that is not spelled out in the interim town administrator portion of this, but I think that's
That's a really good.
So, well, yeah, I mean, just, yeah,
They probably, an interim town administrator should not have direct appointing authority.
That's
during
my-
the interim. Yeah,
that's
Why
what
don't
I
you
saw.
put that language in?
Yeah,
Clear.
I agree,
Any interim position shall not have appointing authority.
unless we delegate
right,
at the time.
right. The select board should be able to make that call. 'Cause A
Yeah,
part,
it's
a
kinda like the
part-time
select board.
interim town administrator probably wouldn't necessarily,
Well, the elected board should be in charge while we don't have
right,
a full-time professional in
Right.
place. Yeah.
So
right.
there's a subsection here about interim town administrator, so I think that's a good point that I didn't consider and that this special act didn't consider either. An interim town administrator shall not have appointing authority unless explicitly delegated by the board. So the board says the interim town administrator can do on-call firefighters or whatever.
Or it extends to like 6 to 12 months and like,
Mhm.
it's just regular operations at that
Yeah,
point.
you need a highway admin.
Yeah.
All right, no, that's a great point. So I think I captured what we talked about, what the board talked about earlier in that the 15 days doesn't get to the efficiency that we want, and then the broad authority didn't get to the control the board wanted, so we kind of split that. We say the department heads stay with the board and everyone else goes to the town administrator. I'm sure general bylaw review committee will have some sort of opinion on this too. The next section says an employee terminated can appeal to the board. Because of an earlier vote of the board that said the town administrator can terminate folks within their probationary period. I just said that provisions of the preceding section shall not apply to people within their probationary period. So it just extends that to say, if you're a probationary employee, we don't have to come back to the board to terminate you. Does the board want the ability
To block termination during a probationary period?
for a position in which they would be the appointing authority? So if we hired a new treasurer collector, and then within the probationary period, the
And you
town
had to
administrator
fire them.
was like, so the appointing authority is the select board. We hire a new treasurer collector, and then 2 months later, the town administrator says, I want to terminate the treasurer collector. Does the board want to do that termination, or do you want to extend that to the town administrator?
Okay, so this is a position that the board appoints,
But they're still.
but they're in probationary.
Is the vote of the board right now says anybody who's within their probationary period.
Right.
So that would include a police chief in their probationary period.
What are the instances that we as a board wouldn't want that to happen? That would be if it happened right away.
You don't want a precocious.
But after 2 months, don't you know that individual? Shouldn't there be a good reason why you're removing them?
Yeah, it's the trust you have in the town administrator at that point. So if
And if you went removing employees against the board's wishes, I don't know that that would be good either. So,
well, you just remove the town administrator.
well, right, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what like having those rules in there don't mean a whole lot. It would be silly for you to try to remove an employee that was doing good for the town.
So,
You know,
so as it's written here, so this is the discussion, as I wrote it, and this is my addition. Shall have the ability to terminate all individuals who are probationary period for positions not listed in 4A1.
Right.
So that's 4A1 is the department heads.
But
So
isn't that implied? Or you're just saying you're trying to double down on that?
I'm trying to double down in that a town administrator does not have the ability to
Okay.
terminate. So what this language says, the town administrator does not have the ability to terminate a position in the probationary period if the select board is the appointing.
Okay, so the select board appoints a department head, then the town administrator can say like, I'm
3 days later.
no, I take it back from you. Okay, right.
So this insulates the town administrator from being able to.
But the board could direct the TA to.
Yes.
Or the TA could recommend the board.
Well, honestly, the hiring for department heads and generally the board is taking the recommendation from TA and the group. Jen kind of did all the interviews saying, we think this is a great candidate. And we tend to take that recommendation. By the same token, if you were to say, it's not working out, we're in the probation period, I'm assuming we could take the vote to say yes, and then you would execute next day, something like that.
Yeah, it is insulating against kind of capricious acts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't even think it's a middle ground. I think it's very reasonable and consistent with
That's
previous.
the same power you were given earlier.
We didn't talk about this too much, but contracts on behalf of the town up to $50,000. So right now, as procurement laws written, generally above $50,000 requires competitive procurement. We don't have that many contracts above $50,000. So it's the type of thing that even absent a bylaw, I'd want to bring to the board. If we're signing a $100,000 contract, it's something I would want.
I think this is the one where I asked where like, do we want to have it like that specific of a number?
Yeah, and that's the purchasing threshold right now. So like, if we're gonna key it off of something, I want it to be keyed off of, you know, if I have to go do sealed bids, that means I know I have to go to select board to sign it versus if I just have to get quotes.
How often does that change at the state level?
It hasn't changed since the early 2000s.
So it's ripe for changing now.
But there is,
It'll change right after we
there
pass
is
it.
a pending,
You reference then the
I-
MGL,
I don't reference the MGL.
you want to though, so if it changes, you're.
You could just say max
That's
limit
what I
of
was
procurement. limit.
Wondering about tethering it to something. Well, because like we go through the process of passing this and it's, you know, it's like,
We're also.
it's a process, right? It's like we go to town meeting and then it goes to the state and then it comes back to us. And then they say, and now we've raised this limit. And then,
So there is pending legislation called the Municipal Empowerment Act, which would raise, so right now, you say up to $10,000 is sound business practices, which is a determination that made by the chief procurement official, which is me. The Municipal Empowerment Act would change that threshold to 100, which seems like a wild jump to me.
Yeah.
Schools already have that. That's already how schools are operating and have been for the last 6 or 7 years. So I put 50 in because we don't have that many contracts that are above 50. We have
Like streets and stuff.
IT, we've got some, you know, our tree removal budget is $50,000 and we essentially spend that with one vendor, but like we don't have a lot of things above $50,000.
What about splitting the difference and making it 75? I'm just looking for that. There aren't that many, but then, you know, if you need to make the decision.
wait, what if it's
instead
52?
Right.
Like, well, I mean, I guess
I mean,
then
it's
you just come to the board.
I'm not trying to minimize the amount, but it's pretty.
Well, so back
I
in
mean,
mind control, what would
I'm
happen?
an advocate for higher.
What would happen if Jeremy approved a bunch of $75,000 contracts last week and came forward? Everybody be okay with that? Said, hey, I just approved a bunch of $75,000 contracts.
Well, you know what, well, first of all, there's other things like budget constraints that keep you in there. And
Yeah.
the question is, what if it came and approved a whole bunch of 50s instead of 75?
That's true.
I don't.
49,999.
Yeah, right. So I don't know, I think it's just
Okay.
given some reasonable leeway, you know.
Yeah, I'm in favor of higher, just because I'm expecting them to raise the
Yeah,
numbers.
the Municipal Empowerment Act, this is, I think, the third time it's been filed. But it seems to have the most momentum this time. It's gotten a little bit narrower and it's at least from time one to top three.
I mean, I don't know, I'm thinking like a paving contract, right? Wasn't that like,
So
that
the,
like 70?
the library, yeah, 72 or 74.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's nice to ask us, but like,
I don't know, I think a specific amount, I like the idea of tethering it to something.
Yeah,
I think
that was
as
my-
the legislature changes its mind, why not just have our law follow direction?
We've also spent a bunch of time pulling specific numbers out of.
It's a good point. On the surplus, this is what I think of immediately, the surplus item bylaw that we have says if the original purchase price was greater than $50, the select board needs to surplus it. The last change in 1964, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the state statute allows us to go, forget now, but something like $5,000 or maybe even $10,000, which, but our bylaw says 50. So
Mhm.
if you want to get rid of, you know, a nice keyboard, it's
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to find where that number is. that we
So-
can tether it to.
So
yeah, so what is the 50,000?
So $50,000 right now is what's required under 30B for, I'll find the
Mhm.
reference, but right now, most goods and services contracts over $50,000 require sealed bids, either request for proposal or sealed bids. So it would be tethering it on that. Things that exceed the simple quote threshold. So right now, anything between 10 and 50, for the most part, $10,000 to $50,000 requires a competitive procurement process, whereas once you hit the $10,000, it's just quotes. You go to 3 vendors that customarily provide that good or service, and you say, what can you do this for?
Mhm.
And then $50,000 is what triggers you to go ahead.
There's an RFP involved. I think the board should be involved.
And
what
that's
it is.
Yeah, that's what the 50 signifies.
I don't want to put the dollar amount in
Just
there.
want to tap to the law.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you want to just say RFP in there?
No.
Because it could be
I would
IFP,
MGL,
RFQ.
Dot, 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 IE, et cetera, you know.
So I,
Put R in
so
there.
I'm gonna make a note, that says like tethered to MGL. And I'll find the reference. And then I'll put nuance in there too, because there are certain things that are exempt from the requirements: insurance, solid waste, architecture and related services, prescription drugs, other stuff. I don't remember
But
it.
if they're exempt to what you're
Yeah.
feathering it to MGL.
Do you want me to be able to sign a $400,000 legal contract?
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's going the other. Good point.
Probably, no, I don't think you should, right? I mean, yeah, not me.
Just an
I-
FYI.
I've just,
signed for it.
I've anonymized this the whole time, and now I've said me. But you want the town.
10 years from now, if you want the next TA,
Yes, thanks.
extend this thing.
Every time.
37 years from now.
I played golf with a boss of mine one time, and he gave me one of his clubs, and I hit it pretty well. He's like, "Yeah, it's a good club," and I hit it pretty well. He goes, "For $25, that's a really good club." And then by the fourth or fifth time I hit it well, it goes, "For $100, for $200, this club is really good." So yeah. All right. These are all minor changes from here on out. Let me scroll up to see what the subsection is. So this is just delineated powers. The town administrator shall be, and then do these things. So this was about collective bargaining. Serve as the arbiter of grievances and chief union negotiator for all collective bargaining agreements under the jurisdiction of the board. I got rid of from time to time.
Yes.
Because
Thank you.
why? So the board shall provide advice and guidelines to town administrator.
Where are you gonna hear the airing of grievances?
I have a poll and so in advance of collective bargaining negotiations. So I just wanted to make that clear that the advice and guidelines are relative to collective bargaining. So before we go into collective bargaining, the board shall, and not from time to time, the board shall direct the town administrator. These are the parameters of collective bargaining. Respond to a coordinated local response to emergency situations. I just added emergency management director in there.
Good idea, yeah.
I don't have any particular insight into that, and I don't think anyone you hire necessarily would. Serve as the board's liaison to news outlets. The board's policies and procedures right now say that the town administrator is the liaison to media outlets. So rather than say when authorized by board, it has been authorized by board by policy. So I think that should be the default.
Agreed.
Here in budgetary powers, it says the town administrator shall present requested balanced budgets to the finance committee. And previously it had said just for departments under the purview of the board. I think it should be incumbent upon the town administrator to present a holistically balanced budget. So even if the park commission wants an additional $4 million, the presented budget should be balanced. And if the parks commission,
You're saying you're gonna work that out before it comes to the floor.
yeah,
I think we talked about that.
to say it should be, it's a holistic budget. Approve the warrants for the payment of town obligations. We just have two different warrants, so I just wanted to be specific about what those were. I hate that AI has ruined the use of M dash to make it seem like it's not mine written, but I did write that with M dash. Seek out and prepare, coordinate, and file application for state and federal and private grants, and then just again, belt and suspenders, which are then accepted and approved for expenditure by the board. Like it's not something the town administrator can then do if something the select board does. And then I added some nuance here. So this is about an absence of the town administrator, and I'm just sensitive to this. Not admitting to delay is a phrase that's in the city of Boston charter about the powers of the interim mayor and caused some consternation because not many places include that phrase and what does not admitting to delay mean. So I wrote to exercise the powers and duties of the town administrator, which require action before the town administrator's return. So just kind of put a finer point on that if there's a procurement 6 months from now, no way, but if you need to sign the payroll warrant this week. Yes, that's part of it. This is for an absence of 30 days or less. And then if there's an absence of greater than 30 days, there shall be an interim town administrator with full powers and authority of the town administrator. So this is kind of like the Speaker of the House provision where it doesn't say it needs to be a member of town government. It could, you can appoint someone outside of town government.
So we change the shall to may.
Right, because it's also the full powers with the exception of appointing authority.
We did the appointing authority exception. I was wondering, are there other
Mhm.
duties we should look at more closely for an interim? Do we really want to give full power and authority to an interim?
No, because I mean, we said that earlier, right? So,
Well, we designated appointing authority. I'm wondering, are there other things? When we did that, I go, oh, are there other things?
Right. Do you want them to sign?
But I think if you put the word may in there, then it opens up.
So this is
Right.
something we had talked about earlier, that if it's May, well, we can talk about that nuance, but if it's May, the chair can serve as the interim town administrator, right? And execute these powers.
Even the contractual stuff we just talked about, but I want an interim EA to come in and be executing contracts without some.
no, we want that, unless they're knowledgeable.
Point is, maybe we do, maybe we don't. I don't want to put something that
Right.
takes that.
Hey, it depends on what it is.
You can put a subsection 2 that say interim town administrator authority may be truncated by select board
Right.
vote in any.
Similar to what.
So maybe-
town
Yeah,
department.
but if we just put the
Maybe-
word may in there instead of shall, it gives us that anywhere. Because it
Right,
gives
so-
anyway.
Well, so I mean, the full powers, I guess I wonder about the full powers, but I mean, it seems like the select board could designate powers for
Yeah.
an interim.
Well, if we put the word shall, then it kind of takes it away. If we put the word may in, then.
Well, I think when I put may there, Mike, I'm reading that as I may appoint a TA with full powers, is what you're saying, but you may not. I'm wondering, do you more specifically saying we would may appoint a town administrator
With some-
with duties
With some
as
powers.
delegated
No,
by.
I think that maybe sometimes we do, maybe sometimes we don't.
Well,
For instance, if we had 30, if we had the town administrator that had to go away 30 days in, say, March or April, right, with the town meetings coming up and everything else, versus they're going away more than 30 days
July and August.
in July and August.
When you're coincidence, you use that.
Yeah, after the town meeting is done and when, it's sleepy.
Well, all I'm saying is all I'm saying is be specific to say that whatever we appoint, we're actually delegating or identifying specific duties and functions for
So-
allocating to
Like,
that role.
so you want to put that instruction in there when you appoint, then duties will be assigned?
That's what I would have to say. So
Why not just put the word may?
the board
I mean, okay, how would we
shall
want to read it?
designate an interim town administrator with powers and authority of the town administrator as the board may assign. So,
That makes more sense.
and it's say, if you have a 9-month town administrator, you're gonna want them to sign the payroll and expense warrants. And you're gonna want them to be able to appoint the administrative assistant, yada, yada, yada. But if you've got a 35-day one, you might not want them to execute $100,000 contracts. So
I think that's,
Or acquire an employee?
the board shall designate an
Right,
interim town
right.
administrator. So I think it's important to say that the board has the responsibility to say this person's in charge day to day.
Yeah.
So shall designate an
Not
interim
the
town
leaving
administrator.
town administrator, is that what you're saying? Like,
Sorry, say that again.
we should be picking it, not the town administrator, that's what you're saying, like, we have the authority to pick the TA, therefore we need to continue to have the authority to pick.
And
the
then we'll fill the position.
And
And
right,
then
we
you
won't leave
you
it.
don't have the option to leave it and say, but you can say the chair is the interim town administrator. Because there's nothing in here about, and they get paid the same amount or whatever. That's determined.
But doesn't, in the absence of town administrator, isn't the chair already
The
designated?
CEO of the town,
Yeah, they already are. So I don't think you need to put the word shall. You put the word may, and it gives us the flexibility, because even if you put, you don't have to put the word shall, because if you don't appoint somebody, it's just the chair. I just don't want to get us in a position where it tells us we have to do something, and if we don't do it, then it puts us in jeopardy somehow. That's all.
Right, I think we need to find out if that's a real thing,
I was
like,
gonna
do
say,
we actually
I don't-
have to do this?
I don't think it devolves to the chair. I think it, at that point, would devolve to the board.
Mm.
And the board, because the chair is first among equals sort of thing.
Mhm.
So the chair is not able to do anything
Without the board
without the
telling me.
board. Yeah. The town administrator, by design of this bylaw, is able to do things without the board. But if you don't make the chair the town administrator,
Yeah.
then you need the whole board to do
Well,
it.
that's fine. You just leave it to the word may, and then it does go to the whole board. I just,
Like,
I
they
said,
need
I
to
don't want
know
to,
that.
I don't like the word shall because it requires to do something that puts us in jeopardy if we don't do it somehow. That's all.
And may allows you to still appoint the chair should the board want.
Yeah, I'm all right with May.
So may, we got screwed by saying may instead of shall.
Which lawsuit? Strip club?
That one word flipped a couple of our arguments after we won some.
So I'm gonna say could.
I'm Mike, I understand your point. I say,
Mike.
let's defer to, council.
I'm gonna put it in.
Yeah, 100%.
Put a comment in.
Yeah, I need to know what our legal line.
What modal verb do we want?
Yeah, Jason, I think it should be could.
Yeah, perhaps. Perhaps maybe if you
From time
have
to
the
time.
time. From time to time, yeah. From time to time, we will appoint a town administrator, interim.
So what I put here in A was, should the town administrator plan leave if 30 days or greater with a known anticipated return date, so this is very personal, the town administrator shall, and I do like shall here, provide the chair of the board with a list of interim town administrator candidates. The board is not obligated to pick from this list. So it just puts the onus on the town administrator to say, it's not fully up to the board to come up with this out of nowhere.
Right.
Put it incumbent upon town administrator to say, here's my.
Because you know you're leaving and you know when you're coming back.
Yeah, exactly. So this is somebody taking paternity leave and not like being terminated or taking a new job. This is, I'm going away and I'm coming back and here's what I want to happen in the interim. You don't have to listen to it though. Just make me mad if you didn't.
I thought that was like the borough board's purview on everything.
Well, I do like the language.
Previously,
but
we spoke.
then just because you come up with a list doesn't mean we have to listen to it.
Right.
It's required to come up with it.
But I also want to make it incumbent upon the, temporarily
Right.
absent town administrator to say, like, you can't just.
I'm thinking of have a nice day.
Yeah, exactly. To be like, here's my plan.
Yeah.
Which I think any town administrator worth the salt is going to do anyway.
This just reminds them.
Again, from time to time, but I didn't want to say it needs to be titled this. I said, or its relevant successor shall review this chapter. Possible amendment. And then that was silly. It didn't.
Sorry, does it need to be every 5 years or can it be at least once every 5 years?
Because you want to do it sooner?
Well, I don't know. I mean, what if they are overhauling the whole bylaws in,
And you're like, it's only been 4 years. We can't touch this one yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sure.
like just,
Timed every 5 years.
well, yeah, because otherwise, yeah, it could be like stranded.
From time to time. Wow, that fits everywhere.
More of it. Just put it in
Just
there.
put it everywhere.
Sorry, Brendan, you didn't just lose the specific.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I got a button at the conference. It was something like local government nerd or something like, I can't remember what it was. Did you see that? It was some.
I think we all resemble that remark.
And then the last section here is just about removing the town administrator. So I don't have a huge opinion on this, but it's just this delineate, and this feels behind every sign of story. This feels like, this is in here for a reason, but
Like it's an excessive amount of text for what we should already have the authority to do.
this just says if you terminate the town administrator can appeal it. I don't have a huge affinity towards this.
Why would the town administrator want to appeal it? And like, don't they have a legal right to sue to do
They
that.
always have the right to appeal it, just, because you say appeal to who? I mean, who do you appeal it to? You-
To
Yeah.
us,
They
Well,
request a
which is
public hearing.
right?
Yeah, so really, the like brass tacks of it is if you terminate a town administrator and that town administrator wants to like fight that, the town administrator is already applying to other jobs, because like who wants to fight their own select board? Like
I mean, I hear about it happening. I do hear about people fighting to get their TA jobs back, then they get them back and they leave.
yeah.
I mean,
So I'm not,
I suppose I could see if you had a quorum of 3
no,
that chose to remove the town administrator and there were 2 people missing. And then you could appeal to the board of all 5, I guess, but I mean, they could do that anyways. I don't see the.
Or they want to tell their side of the story.
If a board was so dysfunctional in which they would remove a town administrator.
With 3 people.
With 2 of the 5 missing, your town administrator would just take the severance and look for a job somewhere.
I would, well, I would agree, but I can,
this goes back to the general question of that we just got recently of appealing the board. Just generally, when the board makes any decision, and it turns out that answer is different depending on the decision made. So
What the chair is referring to is that there was a resident who inquired about how to appeal the select board's decision to grant a pouring permit. And in fact, you need a petition signed by 25 taxpayers or residents to be able to do so. We've yet to receive that.
and so like, is there something similar in place for this? I doubt that there is, but.
Absent a bylaw like this, there's no.
Right, so then like, why would we put this in to make termination more difficult?
Do you think that some of this is like the TA wants to get their side of the story out while they're, their
That could be a
reputation?
good point.
Is that what the mechanism is for?
This came from some other town's TA bylaw.
This is from Upton.
I wonder where they got it. Like, I mean, like,
Yeah,
is it just making the rounds of
Yeah.
TA bylaws in
Yeah.
towns?
There's
So is there any way in which there are protections in the personnel policy that
So
would apply here?
the board is the appointing authority of the town administrator. And in order to, in the midst of a contract, terminate the town administrator, there's already provisions in Mass General Law that say you need to have a hearing to do so. This just kind of delineates, this provides additional protections on top of that in terms of the days. What I think the main part of this that came from someone else and came from the story is the board cannot issue a resolution to remove or suspend within 90 days of a town election. So you have a new board come in and 2 days later say, we're getting rid of the town administrator, just because it's new people.
That makes a whole lot of sense that this was written in. I understand that.
But the rest of
Because
it,
you're protecting the political change.
but the rest of it that says, within 7 days, you can request a hearing, and then in 14 days, like. that seems-
Nobody's gonna follow.
that seems-
So wait, it's, right, public hearing, doesn't there need to be typically like publicizing of a public hearing?
Doesn't have to be, it just says
Yeah.
hearing, it doesn't say,
Public hearing within 14 days to receive.
do they mean a real public hearing?
So there's no requirement within state law
Okay.
on so public hearings for like liquor licenses and poll relocations or
Yeah.
the important are regulated, regulated by state law, whereas this is only regulated by the bylaw. So there's,
As a board, wouldn't the vote to terminate, would that have to be an open hearing, right?
Mhm.
So in its
or
nature,
an open meeting, a public meeting.
Right, we would have, I'm sure there would be executive sessions, we would discuss it and then bring it out and
Right.
open. Yeah,
so
Yeah.
but isn't it the executive session unless the subject of the executive session wants an open session?
Yep, so it just
We can't do it against, in other words, if we're gonna talk about him, we cannot go into executive session about him if he objects to it. If he wants it in open, then we have to do it in the open.
I tried that. But yeah, that just happened in Marshfield. with the TA said like, no, if you're gonna fire me, do it in open session. And they did.
Well, that happened in Mendon.
Yes, it did.
I was the chair. Yeah, so my point is this idea of meetings in public, I mean, it's gonna be done in open session more than likely anyway, so they will have the individual will have their chance to speak their mind.
Exactly.
I would want this to be as simple as possible and refer to the contract of the TA, essentially, which it kind of does, but.
In my recollection, and we didn't talk about this section
Yeah.
previously.
I like the 90 days thing, though. think
I also like the 90-day
Yeah.
thing,
Alright, so I will,
Cowboys.
like a cooling down period. Yeah, because it would be a lot harder now to politically manipulate the board in that way with a 5-member board and the way that we're elected, but I mean, I can still see it happening.
alright, so I was not wholly, convinced in this necessity of this section, and I think the board is either, so we'll just keep the kind of cool down period around elections and then remove the rest. So between that and the other discussions and notes that I made and vote that we took, in the first part, is the board comfortable with me sending this to the bylaw review committee for their discussion and then bring back for an annual town meeting? Like, do you want to, I mean, you'll see it again after the general bylaw review committee, but can we go to that next step and bring it to them?
Lawyer, then bylaw review committee.
I'm fine with that.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. All right, we'll start that. I have a discussion with their chair. So we'll do that.
This is one of those things, like, this is a watershed moment for the town, putting this type of stuff in bylaws. so.
It's usually important to make sure that the position has continuity.
Yeah, I will say as a person who's signed a new contract, which I do for a while, that like it's important for me in terms of things like the expense warrant and signing contracts. But the stuff around appointing authority and the kind of guardrails for the position are going to be very important for the town moving forward, be able to recruit.
Right, because then the next step is town manager that takes that next step of authority, right? That's when we grow big enough to need that sort of management.
Yeah, and it's serial. You can't have that without this.
Right. Hey, good discussion.
20 years from now.
47 years from now. All right. It'll be the city of Mendon.
Yeah.
The little city of Mendon.
6 years old.
86, you'll be just getting into your middle ages. All right, number 15, town administrator report.
All right, talk to me about. So I did a lot of the budget stuff I was going to talk about before. So about timing, about MURSD, about BPT, the lottery. Capital planning is meeting tomorrow. One of the big items will be the Taft Public Library got a $25,000 earmark to study the future of the rectory building. They'll be presenting that to the capital committee. They also got a proposal about what, we need to figure out how to button up the building and just keep it from kind of. What we need to do in the short term, regardless of what our long-term plan is. So we'll be discussing those things. And generally the capital planning goal and on the easel in my office is to align with the special town meeting. But because we have the ability to spend one-time capital, we want to continue our prioritization in the fall into the spring, and there will be requests to spend free cash from capital. We will also consider how to integrate capital within the operating budget, because should we allow it, and I don't know that we can in the short term, but I think it should be a medium-term goal of the town to say, hey, let's do $100,000 a year in capital in the operating budget, and not just rely on free cash for this sort of stuff. Because if we have $100,000 that's in the local receipts budget that is just floating around and unaccounted for, and then realize in free cash, if we could just program that into the local receipts budget to begin with, appropriate that for July 1 and spend that money rather than wait the 18 months for it to flow through and be certified.
And also not coming up with like last minute things to spend that money on and having to
Right, that is
explain
part
that
of
to the
process.
town.
And to say we had a 10% surplus, right? We had $2 million, you know, 2 point whatever million dollars on a $24 million budget. It's like, how are you guys doing? So yeah, again, I rely on this term a lot, but it's right sizing a couple of things.
But I would hope the capital committee is just not looking to expend because the cash is there. There's no problem with rolling free cash into the next fiscal year.
Especially when we talk about what the schools might need for.
So,
But we can't be spending free cash on schools,
So-
like just for 1 year, one time payment.
I think there's some different schools of thought on that.
Well, we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
It's essentially a slow ramp to use existing resources to provide kind of this wedge funding in ways that it will be taken over by new growth and Prop 2.5 in out years.
Yeah, but you're like hedging a buffer.
This is the same idea as what we did with the 2-year contract. Collective bargaining, we kind of wade into,
Pause, wait for it to catch up and then.
we said we went hard and then, but we knew we were gonna make up for it. But basically you're allocating future levy to something you expended sooner. Not a great deal, but I think.
Okay.
And I think the one, you know, as great as the 1 year pause of increases from MURSD was for our current budget, it stunted that growth, you know, it
Even if
made
it's just optic,
a smaller piece of the pie.
yeah.
And to get it back to that, we can use existing resources. And the important part is that it's existing resources in that local receipts have consistently, we're now in 3 years worth of overperformance to budget. It's not like there was 1 year of new
Right,
growth.
or you can say they contain the paused money. They are the buffer because we did not increase that year. There's a lot of ways to look at that.
Yeah,
All right.
it's not planned.
Capital.
It's not planned.
I want to spend capital just because there's, like, it's not a slush fund. I want to
Right.
make sure the committee is thoughtful in what's needed in the next 3 months, or can it wait till this STM to further push it into the cycle you're talking?
I think they're pretty good about that, but, you know, not universally, but I think they're pretty good about that. It's not like burning a hole in their pocket.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not
Not
use
like
it or
that,
lose it.
not like the ARPA money where we.
Right,
That's what
right.
Which we're doing our single audit right now. So that's tomorrow at 7. We are in the midst of our newsletter, so Jen's doing a lot of work with me on our newsletter. So we've got some kind of fun facts, an introduction, got an employee spotlight, say what the heck is a health agent, what do they do? We've got a FAQ with the town treasurer, we've got treasurer collector, we've got a town clerk corner. Each of the other elected boards is kind of given their own space to say, here's what we do. And so in the future iterations, which are planned to be quarterly, it won't just be elected boards. We can say, what's AgCom up to? What's Cultural Council up to? Whatever. But for the first instance, I said, let's just default to elected boards. And then we've got a department highlight. And again, for the first one, we've defaulted to the public safety to kind of say, what were our 2025 metrics? Let's just do a look back and say, here's what we did last year. So we'll change the department highlights going forward. And then we've got a community spotlight, where we spotlight the NITMOC internship program that we use. So they placed an intern with us for 3 or 4 weeks in spring. It was awesome. And I will say, wholly as a result of the internship program, nothing else that this individual did, our intern got accepted into Harvard this year. So we're very proud of that.
Good thing they came here.
Yeah. So that's our win, not theirs. So we're highlighting things like that. So the specifics of those things will change, but that's the general structure of the newsletter right now. And I did the first intro, but I'll look for the Slack board to do it on the next time.
How will people access this? What
Yeah,
is the
TBD, I'm
plan?
gonna see what it costs to send it to everybody.
So like you were thinking possibly a physical,
Yeah, we're gonna say, we'll probably do like a black and white mailing and a black and white print and see what it would cost to send it out to everybody with bulk mailing permit. I think it'll probably be a few $100s, which we will do. I'm looking to partner with BVT to actually print them. They don't charge labor. They just charge-
Few $100s.
To do, because it's not the printing, if we can do the printing for a few hundred and the mailing for
Got it.
500. So that the warrant is like 1,500 or 1,700 to send. So if we can get the printing of it lower and then send it out. So we'll see. And if we only send the first one and then say, here's how you get the second one, and don't send it out, or only send it out once a year ahead of annual town meeting, or
I know when you sent out the warrant, did the warrant have a QR code to access your town administrator?
yeah, because the town administrator report was like 30 pages. and the warrant
Right.
was like 4. So we just did a QR code on the back.
So I mean, I wonder if something like that would be
I mean,
to reach.
I would like at least one copy to go throughout the year,
Right.
like at least one.
But I mean,
Or it
but
might be a
won't
lot,
the mailing be the same cost as the warrant?
or just
Go
send
out
it
to every
warrant.
household?
So I hope to get it out well in advance. of the warrant.
Right, but,
So it will be more pages than the warrant.
right, but if the warrant is 1,500,
But that includes the printing of it as well, so we just send a PDF to the
but
person.
the printing is usually a lot.
It's just a thick card stock.
But that's,
That's a-
the mailing costs are, I think, like several pages versus cardstock. I don't know.
Somebody's gonna figure it out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to know. I think, yeah,
Yeah,
I think the postage will be more than a few hundred. That's all.
I will,
That's my prediction.
even if it's 1,500, we'll
Okay.
still do it, but I will validate your
Okay.
question.
Okay.
But you're right in that the newsletter's envisioned as quarterly. I'm not gonna send it out quarterly. I think there will be a not insignificant subset of people say like,
So-
stop sending it.
I don't know if this would work, but you can do an insert in the like free press for less. So because
I hadn't
they,
thought of that at all.
so that, I mean, I know it's come up for other,
And you could do like a summary and one page insert and have the QR for the rest, or
I mean, I know they have a printing service where they'll put like a single sheet in and that's only a few hundred because they're already doing the distribution. But I don't know if they could do more.
In addition to that, if we can flip it to the Latrells that we're gonna start with the website, so they could post it there, because a few years ago, we tried to change a bylaw where we would send the warrant electronically to everybody. And then there was a concern that there would be some people that would be left off. But my thought is this might be a good vehicle to get people used to using QR codes and more into online, to reduce the need to do that.
and we could still keep a stack at the library and at the
Exactly.
senior center,
Sure.
And
clerk's office.
and put a newsletter or website alert out and text.gov and on the Facebook and all that, on our Facebook. To alert folks. With the Mendon Common site, when I met with the individuals doing it, I want them to be able to maintain their independence to like not just be an outlet for town stuff, right? Like I don't want them to be our newsletter, right? I want them to be able to.
Read the newsletter.
But the newsletter is
Yeah.
news.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're both brand new, so like figuring out that relationship will take a little bit, but that's, I just want to say I'm conscious of that perception.
Yeah, but I'll guarantee to you that those two will figure it out.
I don't know them very well, but I believe that. Yeah.
I'm excited to see the newsletter. I think this will be really great for just outreach to the town, like to really let people know what it is that goes on in town government.
And the first one's a little fluffy. And
Yeah.
we're like
Yeah, that's all right.
figuring out, we're getting a few.
It's like the first episode of Parks and Rec.
Yeah, exactly.
I expect at least 2 Easter eggs.
Yeah. We're far more beat than Westway. So.
She always schedule them on day.
Yeah, the 32nd of the month.
I do make lots of jokes because we're allowed to do stuff kind of after the fiscal year ends within a certain period. So I'm like, our June 45th action is to do this, whatever it is they gotta do. It exists, it's real. All right, so that's our newsletter. We're finalizing IT procurement stuff, so that's gonna go out shortly. That was a goal within the fiscal 26 calendar. And then I said this a little bit earlier on insurance stuff, but I met with some insurance folks about both on the property casualty side and health insurance side. Whether it materializes in 27 is TBD, but we're just, because of the vast costs involved, we've got $1.5 million health insurance budget. We want to continually sharpen a pencil on this and not just do same as last year's stuff. And then lastly, I just want to acknowledge that Connect 351 was 2 weeks ago, and majority of the board and a lot of staff members.
A lot of staff members. Yeah.
That was cool seeing all the staff there. I enjoyed it.
And a lot of folks, I think got a lot out of it, because there were so many disparate sessions you can go to whatever. And we actually tried to encourage even more staff to go, right? Because for $300 for the day and $3 for the night or whatever, come and experience this and get a full day of professional development. So I was glad to see so many folks there. I thought the sessions I attended were engaging. The biggest thing for a position, for a person in my position, is that I get to see so many peers and have all those kind of non-structured casual engagements, be like, oh, what's going on? How are you dealing with X, Y, and Z sort of thing? And really enjoyed it. So appreciated seeing so many of you there, and supporting so many of our staff being there too.
Yeah, I'll tell you the special speakers are always good and they try to tie it all together. But this year the dignity index was something that would hit me so hard that I actually have thought about. I signed myself up to speak about it at work. I don't know how I'm going to speak about it. I got to figure it out. But I really enjoyed that, like that twist on positive discourse with the community, and they really were trying to change the message from arguing your point to coming to a connection with the individual. Like they didn't even talk about agreement or disagreement. It was more about just the compassion of the human connection. That thread through the whole conference was really cool. And then having all the legislators speak, all of that is great. And so with the staff there this year, I thought that was extra special. It didn't feel like we were alone. And then as always, like if you speak up in one session, then somebody finds you in other sessions to talk to you. And I got to talk to some TAs around this area that I hadn't been able to run into.
I
before,
met the new TA from Upton.
Oh, Kristen.
Mhm.
I keep wanting to call her Kristen Berlin, but no, she's from Berlin.
Yeah.
It's Kristen Rubin.
Yeah.
Yeah, she starts at the end of March.
And I got Jeremy told me I got 0.5% off our,
Yeah. So
which is a new thing that we have here. So I didn't know about this, but because we are MIAA,
for property and casualty.
for property and casualty, there are certain events that if you go to there, they will give you a discount because you're on your premium, because you hear about whatever it is they're talking about. So I went to a risk management session.
Yeah, so they
0.5% off.
they stack to a certain degree and then they cap or whatever. But so we don't take advantage of all of them, but a number of them. So we probably get 2 to 2.5% off of our property and casualty premiums per year for events that staff participate in. So thank you for your
I had no idea I was contributing until I said, what is a reward for coming to this session? I explained it, and I texted Jeremy. It was like, did you know?
Yeah, Jen and I are all good. So yeah, the conference was great. And I had a couple folks come up to me and say, like, your chair says he has a good relationship with your town administrator. So thank you for that.
I said I wasn't lying.
Appreciate that. And then last thing, not to do with the conference, I had it written down and I skipped over it. So 2 one-way street issues. one with Cemetery Street that we talked about here. So I started drafting my memo about what the kind of combination of all the discussions that this board has had, and then say, do we want to have an additional public session on this because there's kind of public interest in it. So I'll have that circulated to you before the next meeting. Just a TikTok, so to speak, of what we've done so far and what
You're gonna film a TikTok?
TICK. I got the Facebook started, but that's the extent of my prowess. So just to say what has happened, what are the stakeholders and subject matter experts' takes on this so far? What do we know? And do we want to have further discourse on this? Second was while I was in a bargaining session, and then I had a couple of staff members attend in my stead and in their own interest, a pre-construction meeting for the Route 16 project. A seeming change in the traffic pattern from when it was presented prior, because both myself, the highway superintendent, police chief, and fire chief were all kind of covered on this. The Mass DOT intends to make Maple Street a one-way.
You asked them about that.
I know that.
That was a huge celebration.
Yeah. And that was not in any of the plans. that I
Ah,
had.
jeez.
Okay,
And that was in the pre-construction.
One way from
Wasn't
where,
it planned?
from where to where?
so,
Diving down or going up?
Down, I
Yeah,
believe. I
yeah.
yet to see the actual plan. Just in the webinar, I've yet to see the actual.
I thought that's why they were putting the light there.
I know.
The idea was it was gonna be, you were gonna have to, at the top, you have to take a right and then go left or right. So the way it was only that section from when you come off 16 to, it was only a short section that was one way. You could only go up Maple Street up to the point where you had to take the right in front of the house and then go left or right. That was discussed.
So I don't have plans on it right now. Everyone who was on the meeting was surprised by it. So
They
we
did a
have,
study and said.
So a one-way the whole way?
so we have inquiries into DOT, and this was literally yesterday. I don't have the presentation. I've asked for it. I didn't think of it at the time. It was at the bottom of my list. I should have asked John when he's here because he was on the meeting. But it surprised everybody.
Yeah, so one way the whole way would mean you can't get to the post office.
Yes, the
Right.
answer, well, the short answer is no. Because DOT can control Route 16.
DOT does not have jurisdiction over it.
Right, so the answer is no, that's wrong. Because we had that meeting, we actually had them out there on the street.
It changes.
Mike and I were both there. And then, no,
But it also, if cemetery remains a one way, which I think it will and should, I want to understand the circular detour, what that means, if then that's.
I thought they said heading up from 16, taking a left on 16, that's one way, it's gonna be.
They also sat here and told us we needed to move the monument.
Right.
And now they're like, we could just move the Civil War monument 10 feet and it
Oh.
doesn't need to go anywhere.
They told us they'd have to take Founder's Park.
They're taking part of Founders. They were taking some of that sidewalk, but up at Maple, they said they were gonna basically remove that grassy knoll. Put a wedge there, put a traffic light. You were gonna, like Mike said, you're gonna turn right there or come
right,
straight.
that was the
down
plan.
street.
So the one way was supposed to be heading, if you're
Like at
heading
Emerson.
east, if you're heading east on 16. You take basically the right to go
Yield.
down Maple Street.
Yeah.
So it was just the one way for that short section, but you were still coming up Maple Street.
Yeah.
But instead of you coming up to this terrible view, you have to look out the back of your head. You come up to where the house, basically just before the monument,
Right,
and you have to take basically turn right. So now you're at a light where you're gonna take either a left
Right.
up Maple Street, up 16 going west, you're gonna take a right and go down 16 going east.
So I do not have the plans for this yet.
Okay.
Like I said, I was in collective bargaining and not the I was in collective bargaining negotiations, not the pre-construction meeting. So I've asked for the documents on this. I want to share with the board because it was a shock to the staff who was involved at the time.
I even thought MassDOT, I thought they shut it down, Mike, too.
They did.
Make it one way, because they said going up to the lights here and taking a left would be too much too.
They said they'd have to take a huge.
Wouldn't be able to back up all the way down.
Right, they needed that split to redirect the traffic.
My request is that you send them a notification. Chair approval, telling them we want them at a meeting. And we also need to let Brian Murray and Ryan Fatman, no. They need to be at that.
Well, what are our rights during that?
Well, we want them here.
So we should also go back and watch the original meeting. It's recorded.
Yeah.
And my recollection of
But
that
I
meeting
agree.
is that we were asking for one way and they said no.
They said no to us.
Right.
But, and I didn't think it was about the whole street.
It was just that short
It was
section.
just, yeah. Like
Not the
to,
whole
to
street.
Elm,
Yeah, it's just
to
the
Elm
Post
Street.
office that 100% needs to stay accessible.
Yeah.
Right.
So do those businesses like the
Right.
Correct.
coffee shop
It's just foolishness.
and the church.
Right. It's
Right.
not even, it's,
Yeah.
what planning from, if that's
I
what
mean,
it
that's
is.
why our reaction was so visceral. And again, I have the secondary source reaction to it.
I'm kind of curious, are they removing the light at the end of
Yeah,
Maple? Is that
very
why
curious.
they're choosing not to put the light there?
I was not told that, no.
'Cause that's the only reason they put a light at the end of Maple, because they had two-way traffic coming up.
Yeah.
So I could see them
The
saying.
idea is
"Get rid
that
of
that was gonna stop the traffic so that you could take the left.
So I will say the one-way designation was a construction designation, not a full-time designation.
Oh,
Oh.
oh.
Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
No.
Okay.
I meant Maple and Uxbridge.
So it's during construction.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I don't remember any discussion about a construction.
We never
So
talked- we never talked-
in other words, when you were talking about.
Who cares what happens when
Way
you
out
go
there.
It's 3 years.
Okay.
It's 3 years.
Oh,
It's a long,
okay,
it's a
3
3
years.
years
Still,
is a long time.
Yeah, you can't,
Okay,
that's,
wow.
no, that's not
The
working.
anticipated completion date is August of 2029.
They're not gonna make it a one-way street for 3 years.
I thought it was starting in the spring.
They're starting utility work as soon as the ground thaws.
Yeah. They already marked. it.
Really? This?
Yeah, it's
year?
marked on 16 and they cut out remember we had to give them permission to cut some of the rushes.
Yeah, so the utility work will start when they can get stuff. So, sorry. Yeah, that was a.
I gotta watch this tape.
That was the fire.
Every side road's gonna be one
You're
way.
saying, but the constructor, still 3 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
gotta
not.
mitigate that.
That's, yeah,
That's not
that made,
acceptable.
right, 3 years would totally change the.
Yeah, I wonder if it has something to do with
Area.
like staging equipment and stuff. There's not a lot of place. They were bringing this up a couple of times. That there's not a lot of place for them to store stuff along the route while they're doing the work. And that, there's too many residences and businesses and they have to stash their stuff someplace.
Well, I guess I have to talk to somebody like maybe the guy that owns a driving range and just stash it up on his property.
is there not enough open space in Mendon for them to do?
Well, none that's declared to hold road material. All right, well, that turned one interesting discussion into another, so, any other bombs you want to drop in your kind of?
No. Yeah. No.
We're adding another Florida town
Yeah,
hall.
I'm gonna make no more.
All right. So you heard Jeremy talk about next meetings are not going to be budget related just yet until we get to March. So the 218 meeting, you can expect that to be fairly normal.
Wait, I thought,
No.
no, we're still having some in February.
Yeah, so the meetings.
Just not next week.
Just not next time,
Yeah,
right? Which
just
is
next week.
So we had talked about.
Oh,
nine-
so
It's still
right
in
to the-
February.
We had talked about the 9th
My
and
bad.
11th of next week being, and then
I'm so flabbergasted.
the Fin. I really threw the cameras. The FinCom chair said he was not readily available on the 9th. And I'm available, just not ready for next week. So.
Right, and on the first meeting, I would he not be able to cover.
Exactly, agreed. So we're looking at the 17th and 18th, which is school vacation week, the Tuesday, Wednesday after President's Day. And the 18th is a regular select board meeting anyway. And then the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after that. So the 23rd, 4th, and 5th, which were all on the poll that Katie sent around. But we don't have anything locked in. I want to confer with FinCom and get my budget. documents. Rather than just, I don't know what we don't know yet. I will say too, just because I promised somebody I would say about the, I talked about Cemetery Street, never mind. I already said that.
All right, so we'll get those meetings out after Jeremy gets his
Yeah.
meetings done next week. All All right, so we are going to go into executive session now. I'm going to move to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Section 38,
Easy for you to say.
sorry, start that over again. Pursuant, we'll just read the letters. Pursuant to MGL C30A, I still have to say section 20, how do you pronounce that S?
Section.
Section 21A, number 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, specifically to review and approve executive session meeting minutes as required by MGL C30A, Section 22. We will adjourn from our meeting in executive session, will not return to the public meeting. And we will hold a roll call vote after this motion is seconded. Second. That was a long walk. Discussion. All those in favor, Cooter, aye.
Rugos, aye.
Morale.
All right, motion approved. We're going to go into executive session. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time.